Sorry to interrupt your music, but if you shop online, you need to hear this. Truth is, there are deals out there you're probably not getting. That's why there's Honey. Honey is a free browser extension that scans the internet for discounts when you shop online, then applies the biggest savings to your cart automatically. It works on Amazon, Nike, Best Buy, Target, practically everywhere you shop. Exactly. Add Honey for free at joinhoney.com/audio. That's joinhoney.com/audio.
Why buy used when you can buy certified? Why be unsure when you can have a 182-point inspection? Why settle for less when you can have a 7-year, 100,000-mile warranty? Why go anywhere else when you can visit Montgomeryville Acura? We have a great selection of certified vehicles, all marked with our one-price promise. The price you see is the price you pay, guaranteed. Montgomeryville Acura, where Steve says, sell them, on Route 309, online at montgomeryvilleacura.com.
Attention, attention. The show begins in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
This is an honorable mention with Jeff Schwartz and Shane Hagedorn.
Part of the Creative Control Network of podcasts.
In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death. Oh, it feels the piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Old Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going, no, it could slow.
Capital One presents a 30-second audio tour of Ireland. Sheep, fairies, golf, charming castle, charming castle, charming castle, charming castle, charming castle.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. You know you can actually go there when you use the Capital One Venture Card. You earn unlimited double miles on every dollar you spend on every purchase, which means you'll have plenty of miles to actually travel to Ireland. The Capital One Venture Card. What's in your wallet?
Capital One Bank USA, N.A.
Hey now! Welcome to whatever random day we decide to drop this guy. Welcome to another chapter of An Honorable Mention, the essential Ring of Honor retrospective podcast covering the most successful independent wrestling promotion of this generation. I am your host, Jeff Schwartz, and alongside is my co-host, our expert analyst, Ring of Honor alumni, and former Gabe Sapolsky understudy?
Sure, that works.
Shane Hagedorn.
I'll put a question mark on the end of that one.
I mean,
in theory, sometimes.
We kind of both studied this DVD today.
Yeah,
multiple times, so that we got that going for us. But
yes, well, you multiple times.
Yeah, me multiple times. I did watch this thing twice.
Yeah.
And I've seen it now 4 times, so God bless me.
And what DVD would that be, Mr. Schwartz?
That DVD would be brought to you by Kayfabe Commentaries, Gabe's book of ROH Secrets.
Ooh.
It's very spooky. And in hindsight, very disappointing that we didn't get to see a lot of this stuff. I'm very excited to talk about this one today. We do want to plug our social media. If you get us to 300 followers on Twitter, we're about 25 or so away. We will cover Shane's career in Chikara, which I'm kind of excited to get us to 300 followers, not so much to watch old Chikara.
You only have to watch my matches.
Well, yes. So. Does Sweeney do any commentary over any of that stuff?
Yes, he does.
All right, thank God.
Sweeney is in at least one of the matches with me.
All right, well, that's all that matters to me. Other than covering your illustrious Chikara career, including a volleyball match. So,
Dodgeball.
Volleyball, dodgeball. Something with a ball, not in a wrestling ring.
Or in your mouth.
Or, yeah. Hello. At An Honorable Pod on Twitter if you want to hear more nonsense like that. That's also our Instagram page, at An Honorable Pod. Some cool photos have gone up. I am on Twitter and Instagram at the Jeff Schwartz. Partner, hit us with yours.
Twitter and Instagram at Hagedorn Shane. Also just Shane Hagedorn on Facebook and Shane Hagedorn on YouTube for the occasional promo and collection of just old videos of myself, so I can go back and fap to them. And we also have our YouTube page. Just search an honorable mention, get us up to that magical mystery number so we can get our own URL.
Yeah, whatever that is. And if you feel like it, do us a favor, play that Samoa Joe episode that's like 6 hours long, and you can just mute it, go to work for the day, and then come home, mute it, and put it in a second window and watch it again. Just trying to add so we can get our own custom URL. I also have a Facebook page. Just go search Jeff Schwartz. It's a picture of Channing Frye, Cleveland's greatest athlete. So go over there and look. We are, of course, brought to you by the Creative Control Network. And the Creative Control Network is headed by Joe Feeney. His Twitter page is at JFF, EE, NEY, 3RD. And at the CC Network 1 for all the latest news and notes on Twitter and the Creative Control Network. Be sure to also follow our scientist of sound, Zach Johnson, at Radio ZT. He delivers us the best intro and outro every week and makes sure we sound cooler than the other side of the pillow. He also sent along a great video talking about CM Punk and Punk the Final Chapter, which is available over on our YouTube page.
Are you a friend or family member struggling with drug or alcohol addiction? Your private insurance provider may be able to help. Banyan Treatment Center offers top-notch facilities and care at locations across the country. Give them a call to learn more. 1-800-508-0119. That's 1-800-508-0119.
We've got our host, Sean Oliver, from the Kayfabe Commentaries Department. You ever met Sean Oliver before?
No, not that I'm aware of. Not that I remember at all. I did watch a few of these, because we used to sell these Kayfabe Commentaries DVDs in the office before Sinclair made us stop selling everything non-Ring of Honor, except PWG, I think. And so I'd watch them occasionally, some of the other ones. And we actually sold this one too, which for a little, I think we did this for one run. Like, we sold it for one run, and once we sold out, we were done with it. It wasn't one of the ones that were reordered or, restocked or anything like that, because, I don't know, it felt kind of weird to sell this one, honestly, but meh.
Especially when you were comparing it to what we were actually getting from Ring of Honor at this period of time.
Yeah, and I don't remember the time frame of, like I said, before we jumped into this, I was like, I had no idea when this was even recorded, because I had never seen it before. Then I tried to remember when it was released, and I don't remember that either at all when it was released. It was early into 2009 that it was released. I know that. It wasn't super long after Gabe got fired that this got released by Kayfabe Commentaries. So obviously we know when it got recorded.
Right. Yeah, I've not had the pleasure of meeting Sean Oliver. I'm a big fan of Kayfabe Commentaries, though. I really enjoy their timeline, shoot interviews. They've got a wide array of shoot-style interviews that take the boringness of shoot interviews completely out of it and make it fascinating, and you learn stuff, and I kind of like that.
Unless you watch the one with Kevin Nash, where there's no follow-up questions and no pointing out the very obvious not lies, but just having time discrepancies. I think the Kevin Nash one continues the whole idea that Goldberg punching the window is what killed the new NWO when they didn't happen. That we've heard that story on many other podcasts and shooter interviews, but that was one of the ones that always stuck out to me was of the Kayfabe Commentaries DVD was the Kevin Nash one.
Yeah, I think my favorite. Actually is with Gabe as well. Gabe rebooked the ECW launch.
I have not seen that one.
That's a fascinating one. That might be something if we ever do like a Patreon thing, that may be something that we involve. because it definitely is Ring of Honor adjacent.
Well, Nate starts school very shortly, so we'll have a little bit more free time during the day.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, guys, we tape these during the day. We don't get much of a time at night. That's when we both go to work. We live in opposite land. But this particular shoot interview, basically Gabe and Sean are seated at a table, and they're basically having a back and forth discussion, and Sean is hosting. He says he's here with Gabe Sapolsky, the now former booker of Ring of Honor. Gabe clarifies and says he's unemployed, which I think Gabe kind of was somewhat tight at the beginning of this interview, and then he loosened up.
Which I think is pretty much par for the course with any conversation with Gabe. No, yes. Like, awkward as shit to begin with, even with people he knows, and then gets more relaxed as you know, once you kind of get into the groove of conversation.
So before we really dive into this is kind of like something that would go at the end of the podcast, but it fits to that conversational style that Gabe has. When Dragon Gate had their first show, a bunch of friends decided that I would be in charge of buying tickets. So I called Gabe, and we got our front row tickets, and I had like a really nice 45 to 50 minute conversation with him. But the first 10 minutes of the conversation were just, okay, for who, what, yes. And then it was like all of a sudden the switch flipped, and we were talking baseball, and we talked about the Phillies and the Indians, and it was like he was a totally different person. And I was like, yo, this was a really pleasant conversation. And I think back on this, almost 10 years later, and I think back to that phone call and think, God, that was like the best conversation I ever had with Gabe. And it was like he was a real person.
The last time I saw him, which was also the first time I saw him post Ring of Honor, was at the, in air quotes here, last show at the arena, the CZW, was it a Dragon Gate or an Evolve?
It was Evolve.
Evolve double shot. CZW did first, and Alex Payne was working the CZW portion, so that's why I was there. And then the show that was later, we left before it started, but it was, we didn't get past the 10 minutes of awkwardness, because it was like, hi, I haven't seen you in 2.5 years. How's everything? And we didn't have, given the environment and the time, didn't really have the opportunity to get past the awkward initial conversation stage. But that was the last time I saw him. Matt, yeah.
Well, we both owe Gabe a lot, and
yes.
All things considered, like, we can make all the jokes we want, and we'll probably crack some during this interview, or during this podcast. But Gabe kind of revitalized me as a wrestling fan, and Gabe, helped lead me to not only this podcast, but a lot of my really close friends that I have all over the country, and I'm forever grateful that he was part of that. That he helped, his ideas and creativity help, contribute to that. So if Gabe ever does listen to this, we're busting your balls for fun. This is not being mean. I'm being 100% genuine right now. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. I would also say thank you, because regardless of the fact that I went to the school, did not mean I needed to be used. If I was the drizzling shit, you wouldn't put me on a fucking show if I was an embarrassment to the product and the booking. Yeah, and I think I was in some ways impatient with the process, and also there are certain things on my end of the process that I needed to hold up that I didn't. But it was the naivete of shit at the point when Gabe got fired. I was still fairly green.
This is 4 years into the business for you?
Just a little over 4 years after my first match. Yeah.
So I mean that's a very short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I'll be forever bitter about is that I didn't get to have a match on my 1-year anniversary because it was the second Kobashi show.
Yeah.
You
just want to share the card with Kobashi.
I was so pissed off. I wanted to share the card with Kobashi, and it was my 1-year anniversary in the same building. I was so mad I didn't get to have a match that day. God damn it.
Oh, man. I was.
But now, in all seriousness, though, like, yeah, I would be. It's thankful for what I did get, you know?
Oh, it's a word Bryan Danielson used a lot at the end of his first WWE run, and it was gratitude.
Yes.
So, but this interview is really fascinating. So, Sean asked Gabe how he's doing. You know, this is taped about 5 weeks after Gabe was terminated, and says that he's jokingly furious and but in all seriousness, he had a great 14 years. He understands his release. He says his behavior and the stress and his reaction around the company were a big reason that he was fired. He was told that he ran a dictatorship, and wrestlers would and wouldn't agree with that. He believed in his ideas and will deliver more reasons as to why he was fired later. Would you agree with the fact that he ran a dictatorship?
I can see, I think, how that would be... How people could take that perspective, because when you have one person essentially who's in charge of creative and not a committee or anything like that, it's a lot of like, all right, well, this is the way we're doing things ultimately. I guess there wasn't people I think when you talk about like WWE booking, a lot of people say, well, Vince McMahon's the final say. It's like, the creative committee will, they pitch these ideas and everything, but Vince McMahon has the final say. The only creative committee in Ring of Honor were any ideas, the boys would throw at Gabe. He was the one and only voice for the most part. And so I guess you could say that I could see how that could be taken as a dictatorship. And he kept a lot of the ideas, I think, very close to the vest in the I Hate God binder, which is EYE, Hate God, for anybody.
Yes.
But so I can see how all that, because, like, even watching this back, I was like, some of the shit he talks about, I was like, fuck. Me and Alex were talking about it when I was showing him the comparisons between what was and what did happen versus what Gabe had planned. And he was like, I didn't know that, like, some of us had no fucking clue about what some of the stuff that was going on in his head, because he didn't share it, when he was in the office.
And most creative people like Gabe are not very forthright and outgoing with that stuff. It's got to formulate and be absolutely 100% perfect before it can come out of their mouth and be shared with people. And Gabe's an artist. And he talks about it in the DVD, is that this process, it's his process.
And who knows? Maybe if I would have inquired, but I didn't feel like I was in a position in a lot of that to inquire. I just kind of went with the flow with stuff that involved me, and who knows? Maybe if I would have asked, but there's also that part of me that just didn't like to know. I kind of liked to see where things went without knowing it in advance. I knew the big things, but I didn't know all the beats, along the way necessarily.
Well, Gabe's final booked show was October 25th, 2008. That was in New Jersey. And his final produced DVD was Glory by Honor 7 from Philadelphia. That was back in early September.
It was mid-September. That was a show where that was a show where I fractured my shoulder.
Okay. And that was
also another big show, for many other reasons.
Yeah. He says if one day everyone gets rich, maybe I'll be bitter, but he's not bitter at all now. At the time, I don't think I believed that. He wasn't bitter. I think everybody, if they get fired from a job, has a small part of them, or in some cases a large part of them, where they're bitter. We've both been fired before.
Guess it depends on how it happens.
Yeah. So I don't know. And now that ROH just sold 9,000 tickets at Madison Square Garden in one day. Maybe he's bitter now. I don't know.
I mean, he did. As you know, in the limited conversation we did have that day at the arena, you know, that was one of the things I do remember being said to me. Like, you know, between family, you know, his kid, and dealing with the entire, you know, World Wrestling Network legion of fucking shows that he is involved with. He's like, you know, he said to me, he's like, I understand it. I'm not better. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it as, you know, to what they're doing now. And, you know, I've kind of got my own world to deal with.
And he does. I mean, they're running another 2 shows this weekend. They run, like, you know, the whole crew of events WrestleMania weekend. So Gabe's got a lot on his plate, and he's part of the WWE consulting team, I guess, now. So, you know,
interesting considering, you know, in this, you know, at the end of this DVD, he talks about how he has no desire or interest to ever. But, you know, that was a decade ago.
And he claims that burnout was not a factor. He says the job is tough. Every show has to be a DVD that sells. So that's like doing 40 pay-per-views a year. Can't disagree there.
Very true. Very true. And I think that was one of the things that those who followed in his footsteps did not understand.
Sean asked about some of the things that he was proud for amongst his final stories. And he said that he was very proud of the Rhett Daisy Delirious story. And I think, you know, that is something that both of us can say was very good and got a ton of reaction. It didn't go as far as we would have liked, but it was definitely, you know, something that got a reaction. And to see somebody like that getting that reaction from the school that Rhett got in New York at the Hammerstein, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, he put in the work, and you know, as we talked about in the Northern Navigations episode, even in not so great states, he, you know, stepped up and delivered. Yep. He delivered for the most part anytime he was given a chance, you know, in those early stages to prove himself.
The one thing that starts out from the beginning of this interview is he says he doesn't have a booking style, but the company forced him into a style, and that he didn't get into a groove with the pay-per-view and DVD continuity, and that rhythm killed hurt his booking, and I can't disagree there.
Yeah, I think it sucked. I thought the same thing when we taped Sinclair. I thought the same thing when we taped HDNet. I think about that when I look at, you know, NXT's tapings, like TV tapings, which I guess with NXT it's a little bit easier because, you know, their house shows are just house shows. They have no storyline impact. They're just house shows. But bulk taping TV always sucks. And when with the Ring of Honor model, when you're in Gabe's case at this point, you know, you're doing your house shows and then you tape a pay-per-view, but that pay-per-view is not going to air for 2 to 3 months down the road, as he talks about, and as we talked about when we did the New Horizons episode in the archives. Gabe started booking like pay-per-view to pay-per-view, trying to have his own continuity from pay-per-view to pay-per-view, as opposed to trying to, you know, put that continuity from DVD event to pay-per-view. I always DVD event to pay-per-view event, and so it pissed me off so much down the line when Gabe was not guilty of this. It became a thing during Adam's run when they would refer to the non-TV taping and non-pay-per-view events as house shows, and I'd be like, these aren't fucking house shows. They're on DVD. They are not house shows. We don't do house shows.
Right.
But, you know, in Gabe's, like with Gabe's case, it was, you know, you look at something like, take, for example, Driven. The Driven pay-per-view where Kevin, Steen, and El Generico won the tag titles was filmed in September. It didn't air until after Gabe was fired. They were defending the belts before they actually won them, in terms of what the audience was seeing. The audience that was larger than the people in the building. And then to make it even worse, more difficult, we had the 30-day moratorium on being able to release those DVDs. So not only was the show taped in September, it didn't air on pay-per-view till November, and we couldn't release it on DVD until December, January.
Yeah.
So I can imagine from a booking standpoint how that would just be like make you pull out your fucking hair.
And, you know, he said that the pay-per-view promotion was not what they got promised. I don't know what the intricate details of that were with G-Funk.
I don't know the intricate details of it either, but yeah, I think we all kind of felt like we got fucking conned.
And, you know, he also says that the pay-per-views did get the buys they wanted, but it didn't show any effect on overall business, and it watered down the stories. Definitely agree there. The genesis of Ring of Honor was to create a video product, and it grew a ton. He credits Kerry Silkin and said that Gabe says that he was afraid of expansion, while Kerry's goal was just to be aggressive and go everywhere and give Ring of Honor to everyone as much as possible. And I think this is a really nice, like, to go back now and kind of hear Gabe talk so positively about Kerry, kind of makes you feel like, okay, maybe the bitterness hadn't seeped in yet.
But I think he's, from my perspective and my experience, yeah, I mean, Kerry was, wanted the TV, wanted pay-per-view, wanted to expand, in part because, I mean, I don't think it's any secret to say Ring of Honor was bleeding Kerry, in terms of money. So how do you generate more money? By expanding your markets and expanding your the ways you're providing your content to your customers. So you had to go to new places. When the international tours like the UK shows or the Japan shows came up, like, you got to do those things. And that's why we went to some, find the new markets we would go to and test the waters and see how they went. Because, well, you have to do those things, otherwise you're running the same in front of it. You're theoretically, and not even theoretically, in actuality, and I think you could say this from going to shows, you're running in front of the same fucking people every time you come to a town.
Yep, 100%.
So you have to find new ways to attract those eyes to your product.
Yep,
and hold on to them. And
yeah,
hold on. Kerry gets, I guess you push for. In fact, like Kerry pushes, Sid to go find new buildings, or however, or somebody, says, all right, we've got this building here, and here we can do this and this. And then Gabe has to put together a product that's going to make these people want to come back to see it the next time we come to town. And he kind of addresses that a little bit when he talks about, the St. Louis and the Nashville shows.
Yep.
I'm talking about the St. Louis and Nashville shows as far as, like, we don't have a next show booked. So, and he talked about that, like Montreal too.
Yep. So then he says his main focus was to keep a paycheck coming in, and he was most vocal with creative, and that's how he became Booker when Ring of Honor started. He refuses to acknowledge Mr. LOL, I'll pretend you said 18, and Doug Gentry, which I thought was interesting, especially considering where we are now with that. He did say that he had a premonition that a new direction was coming, and he told Kerry in August and September. Do you know anything about this?
No, nope. No, but I can when as he starts to describe what he means, I can kind of flash back to what was going on in the shows and see what he was talking. Like I said, he kept shit close to the vest, at least as far as me.
And that's kind of the thing, like, he's got this new direction coming, but there's not a lot of new talent that's out there that he talks about, but we'll talk about that talent list at the end, that there was a ton of people out there. He says that he sent the notes to Sean about a week after he was fired, so none of the notes were influenced or changed based on the shows that ROH ran. He began the new directions on 1024 in Danbury and 1025 in Edison. He talks about the Osirian portal, Brody Lee, Cheech and Cloudy. They were all set to start. The portal doesn't fit to me. at all?
No, they did not fit to me at all.
But Brody Lee, Cheech, and Cloudy, I think, are perfect fits. Especially Brody Lee, who we all know now as Luke Harper. He wanted to write differently for the website and format the shows differently. Did you get a memorandum on that website writing?
Well, at that point, I wasn't doing it. I didn't start doing all the website content till Adam took over. And, literally, it was the day Adam took over. It was, okay, you're writing the website stuff now. Because, Adam would write some, but...
wasn't
I don't know. I think to definitely pat myself on the back here, I was a lot better writer than as far as that content than before or after me. Honestly, what few articles I've read since I stopped, since I got fired, I read and I'm like, this is really not great writing. I don't know. And then I'm totally patting myself on the back, and there's nothing wrong with patting yourself on the back every once in a while. And I thought I did a hell of a job writing the website articles and all that. But I did not start doing that until after Gabe was gone. While Gabe was there, myself and Alex would put together the programs, like the paper programs. We would do that stuff. But usually, and then articles for that though, Gabe would kind of peruse and approve, either email them to him before we print them, or he would proof them in the office on my computer before we would do them. But
how would he greet you when he came to visit the office?
Hey, losers!
Thank you. He wanted to create more moments on the shows, like Homicide coming out in Danbury. He wanted more run-ins like Nana and Brody Lee. He said Brody Lee was going to be given a big opportunity, and that he loved the Jimmy Rave toilet paper. He wanted more fan interactions, and he thanks the fans that first began throwing the toilet paper. To which, as I was watching this, I said, "You're welcome, Gabe." Because I was one of the very first to start mass buying stuff at Sam's Club of toilet paper and bringing it to shows.
Yeah, why we never sold it at the merch table, I don't know.
Well, they're selling streamers now at the pro shop.
Yeah.
So he thought maybe he could recreate something like that and suggested Claudio. So
I think we got a little bit of that fan interaction with the hey.
Yeah.
And we talked about that before, with how it worked as both face and heel for Claudio, and the way that Bryan on TV's yes and no chance worked. Whether as in support or to piss him off, the Hays, I think, were similar to that.
And I think that, the most money-making man kind of thing, it was never really applicable to Claudio in ROH, but... maybe drop some money from the ceiling, similar to the way they do Okada now.
Ooh, that would have been a nice idea.
Or, something like that, I guess.
Yeah, but we didn't do so well when we tried to drop things from the ceilings. Don't you remember the day in Chicago when we tried to shoot the confetti gun and old man Rick had it way too far away? That's probably what happened if we would have tried to drop fake money from the ceiling.
Yeah, Claudio dollars. Or they could have creative success bucks.
Yes, exactly.
But he talks about wanting more characters. He talks about Grizzly, Rhett, Prince Nana. He mentions Rhett picking up people in the lobby. Stuff that wasn't even taped, just to kind of build up the characters. Which, obviously there was a little bit more of that, but none of those guys ever really got the chance to go anywhere. At least under Gabe. And... he mentions the Brent Albright parking lot attack post-show, and he stood and watched, and he loves that the police were called to break up a riot.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, the irony that happened, and then, 10 minutes later you don't have a job.
Yeah, so, let's talk about that, because this is going to be one of the big reveals for this show.
I guess it depends on when we drop this, because we are going to talk about Ring of Homicide 2 in October. So
yeah. So do we want to save when we both found out for that?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what Gabe's looking forward to going forward. He has 3 things that every show he wants to involve. Number 1, how does this benefit Tyler Black? And in my notes in parentheses, I have the chosen one, ? And then I roll my eyes. Number 2, how does this benefit Davey Richards, who is fresh from Japan and back with a vengeance? I, of course, roll my eyes. And number 3, he wants to keep Jimmy Jacobs out of the main event. And Jimmy main evented every show in September. He needed to pull back the reins a little bit. He compares Jimmy Jacobs to Eddie Gilbert and says that Joey Matthews helped get a lot of creative side of things through to Jimmy Jacobs. And I really was kind of stunned by that comparison, but it is so appropriate. Jimmy Jacobs is so creative, and I don't know how many people realize the things that he was writing for WWE and the stuff he's doing with TNA now, but that's a guy that could be a head booker somewhere.
Yeah, I agree as far as the creative stuff. I mean, God, I don't know. I don't know if there's any sort of clear delineation of, say, for example, what Age of the Fall stuff was his brainchild, what was Gabe's. It's, probably some sort of marriage of the two, but it's, it's just, he's very clearly, a creative individual who had no problem morphing himself throughout his career to continue to grow and not be the same thing. There is no relation to the Zombie Princess and jumping Jimmy Jacobs. There is no connection between Huss and even Lacey's Angels Jimmy Jacobs. There was the constant evolution. So I think as a creative partner, I think in some ways, this isn't something that I ever heard from Gabe's mouth or from Jimmy, but I can almost look at it and see that and wonder, did Jimmy kind of over the years kind of slide into that role that people kind of referred to Punk as Gabe's Raven? If Jimmy kind of slid into that role, with Age of the Fall and Lacey's, the I Love Lacey stuff.
Yeah, and I just think that's just such a fitting comparison. Jimmy was a unicorn. He just constantly was, reinventing himself, and that, kept him in a job at one point. He's going to be dropped from the roster. So
couple times.
And then he was a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
But then he always came back. So where we are, we've got the Jacobs Aries best of 3 series blow off coming up. Gabe intended it to be more artsy. I don't know what that necessarily means.
I think that means a little less stereotypical wrestling angle and a little more psychological and mental. Like you required a little more thought and investment than your standard wrestling angle of wrestler A hates wrestler B. And I think even without Gabe, we still got some of that.
Yeah.
It's a rare thing in wrestling, I think, to get those type of angles. It was one of those things, I felt like that's what they were going for when they turned Austin heel after WrestleMania 17, was something a little more cerebral, and they failed miserably.
Hollywood Rock.
Hollywood Rock, which I just thought was coked up Rock because he bounced around like and talked a million miles an hour, and I just assumed he was on cocaine because he was in Hollywood, and that was the gimmick.
Yeah.
Rock
wasn't actually doing cocaine, guys.
No. Just now that he was Hollywood Rock, he bounced around like a freaking cokehead. That's how I take that when Gabe says he meant it to be more artsy and artistic, is that it was less standard.
Well, one of the other ideas that Gabe mentions as far as where we are is that Nigel's title reign is winding down, and he's still showing strength versus how past champions were kind of wore down and beaten down and just didn't have any more left to give. He wanted Nigel to actually give more at the end of his reign, which I thought was genius.
Yeah, it was a nice trade that we talked about. We talked about Joe
and Bryan.
Joe's title run and Bryan's title run. That they were just kind of worn down and beaten down. And Bryan, quite literally from the injury, in August of 2006, before he dropped the belt. Nigel. It's the opposite, considering that Nigel physically was a fucking wreck.
Yep.
But kept going.
Well, we've got two big single stars, Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, in a rivalry. Their angle would continue. We'd also have Steen and Generico having tons of challengers lined up, long run, for the both of them. We have the Tyler Black push and the eventual separation from Jimmy Jacobs, which, if you'll remember back to the October 25th show, Gabe's last show, Tyler Black was not involved in the attack on the Necro Butcher. He says that Tyler Black is Barack Obama, who talks about building to the future, where Jimmy Jacobs and he will have their feud over their differing philosophies before it really ramps up, which, comparing Tyler Black to Obama makes me roll my eyes even more. All the way in a complete circle. But back to the computer screen in front of me, of course, Kevin Steen and El Generico, tag champs, they're going to feud with the heel Briscoes. And they haven't touched for a year. Which is pretty amazing. That they've been able to have everybody go in separate directions for that long.
Yeah. Yep. It just showed that, that there was plenty to do with all of the guys that didn't involve marrying them to each other. And I guess, injuries helped, because I feel like Mark, wasn't in the whole time. He had, some injuries here and there, but yeah, I mean, at that point, what more could you do after the ladder war?
Right.
You needed some time apart.
It mentions the returns of Samoa Joe, Takeshi Morishima, and Naomichi Marufuji. Was there more planned for Joe other than Chicago?
Not that I remember. My recollection of that, and Alex and I were talking about it, is that we'll talk about what Gabe had planned here, but that what we got, the match with Joe and Tyler, was more a case of I feel like it was a case of the office not knowing what Gabe, not having any clue what Gabe had planned, and just thinking of it as building a way to build, and Pierce Sue thinking as a way to build Tyler up by having him in the match against Joe. But I don't recall it being any more than a one-off. Because really, what could you have done with him besides one-off matches? You can't invest in an angle or feuds or anything like that at that point.
No, he's a TNA hostage.
He was at that point. By that point, he was dyed in the wool TNA guy. So there was. I don't see any benefit we would have had aside from trying to pop a house, to using him on a regular basis.
And then, of course, we've got the basic wrestling feud, Sweet and Sour Inc., which, of course, is involving yourself feuding with Roderick Strong, Eric Stevens, and Brent Albright. And that would eventually kind of go nowhere because Albright disappeared. Question mark there.
No, I mean, it ended. It ended, in the Steel Cage Warfare in January.
Yeah, but then Brent went and disappeared. Captain Safety.
Nah, he stuck around for long enough after that.
Jerry Lynn would have one last shot at glory, kind of similar to the Ric Flair win until you lose and then retire type of deal. Necro against the Age of the Fall. This would help flesh out the Necro Butcher character. Of course, this was almost an idea that was spawned from an accident. Many fans noticed this live, and I of course was one of them. Gabe didn't think fans saw this, but he credits Jimmy Fetterman, Ring of Honor cameraman, and shouts out Eric Santa Maria and Dave Puente as well. They found Necro hugging his wife, who was 9.5 months pregnant.
She was big as she was like, I feel like she was like past due.
Yeah,
at that point.
she
Like,
was.
I remember her being like, well, how is she even at this show?
But Necro hugged her after his match with Morishima, and that kind of got the wheels turning in Gabe's head to maybe make Necro fighting for his family type of guy.
And then, you know, as Hill mentioned as well, trying to cash in on the wrestler if Necro caught on from that.
Correct. He mentions another idea, the Daisy Hayes, Rhett Titus storyline, talks about Sarah Del Rey going after the Shimmer title. The YRR and the Vulture Squad was going to be a story to build Kenny King. Prince Nana has to beg for a job, lies about losing his money. We'll get into that one later because that's a story for probably that could be a show unto itself. But eventually, Daisy Hayes would try and save Delirious from the Age of the Fall, try and save his soul. Mentions Marufuji coming back for a title shot, finishing up Danielson Morishima, Nigel going for the tag belts, a Nigel and Bryan pay-per-view match, and coming out of Final Battle weekend, he wanted the first part of 2009 set up. And I think Gabe very clearly in his ideas does flesh that out.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things you can look at and see where it was coming from based on where we left off, especially like, you know, Nigel and Bryan's pay-per-view title match had been being set up since Respect is Earned. You know, since the very first pay-per-view, it had been being set up, and the Morishima stuff had been building for a while, and we never got that, you know, that satisfying conclusion to it, you know, because Morishima went back to Japan. So we never got like the cap on that story, and you know the Marufuji and Nigel title thing was, you know, kind of a wraparound back from 2006 when the roles were reversed and Marufuji was the GHC champion, and you know everything with Sweet and Sour and Roddy had been building for months, and you know tying in all the stories of Roddy and Eric into that, and just there was so much going on from the place that doesn't tell stories, as has been the frequent critique of Ring of Honor in its entire history, no matter who the booker was. I think that has always been a criticism of Ring of Honor that is not necessarily warranted.
Correct. So he gets the subject of the video wire. The 1227 video wire leading into Final Battle would highlight Brent Albright's team, which was Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong, joining forces for the very first time after their long feud. But they would never interact, and it would be Bobby Dempsey who would help unite them for Steel Cage Warfare against the evil Sweet and Sour Incorporated. Jerry Lynn's final title push, Necro Butcher Family Man. Roderick Strong would talk about why he left Larry Sweeney. This would help develop his character a little bit. He would claim that Sweeney's corrupting ROH, making it all about the money, and kind of establishing Roddy as the ROH veteran. Claudio would talk about why he hates Bryan, which is not something that was really talked about. It was more of a competitive rivalry at this point. Gabe didn't like the live promo, and the whole angle was based on respect.
He was referring to that live promo from New Horizons,
yes,
right, where we brought the fan into the ring, and yeah, that was a weird fucking promo.
And then he, of course, wants to hype up Nigel's strength growing as a champion, build up the YRR, and compare Jacobs and Austin Aries to one another, which was something Tyler Black began in Cleveland on August the 16th. So that's where we're at, and at this point in the DVD, we would open up the actual book. Gabe says he hasn't...
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Gabe says he hasn't opened the book up very much since his firing. He, of course, shows us his Slayer and Neurosis stickers on the book.
And I hate God.
And, he says he would buy a new binder every year. That's something Dusty Rhodes would do. We saw that in Secrets to the Ring DVD.
I really, sidebar to that, if you have that, you need to send it to me because At the time, I thought it was the most boring piece of shit.
Oh, it's
but I think I would appreciate it a lot more now than I did at the time.
It's literally the best like non-show DVD of that era. There's nothing even close. Like the Joe Punk shoot interview and the Cabana Punk shoot interviews are right there, but the Dusty Secrets of the Ring is something frequently quoted between me and several friends of mine.
What about my DVDs?
No, not you, Aaron. Sorry, you have to stay in the corner. In Gabe's book, I thought this was fascinating. He says the opener should go 10 to 15 minutes on a show, and he wants both guys in the back by 8:20 if the bell time is 8 p.m.
I really would have to go back and watch, like, and put this to after watching this. After watching this, I thought I got to put this to the test with the next show we do that was a Gabe booking, which would be, from the day we're recording this, it would be Reborn Stage 1.
Yeah.
Be the next thing I watched. It was a Gabe booking. Because I'm
bullshit.
All of it, and I appreciated that. With even Sean goes, yeah, but you had like 4 or 5 hour shows. Like, you're telling me all this shit, but some of your shows are like 4.5 hours. Yeah. I was like, good for you, Sean. Don't let him slide on that shit. Yeah. That may have been the attack. And then I love the guys don't always stick to their times. Which, hey, that's also very true.
100% true. 100% true.
You know? And so, hey, fans, sometimes if you wanted to bitch and complain about having 4+ hour shows,
yell at the boys.
Sometimes you can yell at your favorites, because sometimes it was because they took their 10 minutes and went 15, which meant the next match that had 15 either went 15 or Gabe would have to cut time. I mean, so it's putting timing out a show is not as easy as you think, especially when it's this type of show and not a live show.
Yeah, it's incredibly.
I think people feel they occasionally took liberties with their time constraints. Some people were given the liberties. We talked about that in the Bryan episode in the archives. Other people just took the liberties of.
Who is one guilty party of just taking liberty with their time?
I mean, I love them, but there's so many times I felt like my guys, like that Steven Generico and the Wolves as examples, would definitely go over their times. Chris and Claudio, maybe, like tag team stuff.
I'll give you a good two, and this is also a tag team. Jay and Mark, yeah. I think I think that a lot of that predated like TV. Because I think we'll talk about it, when we do HDNet stuff, that the HDNet experience, I think, taught a lot of the guys how to be better with time, especially with with stuff that was live, like the pay-per-views eventually would become. And that's one of those things, like, very rarely are you worrying about time, but if you had a long drive the next night or weather, those were things were considered. So, and it's a DVD product, so there you go. So we head into Montreal, November 7th, 2008, and Gabe at the start of every show talks about considerations. What is important for this show? First time in is a consideration here. They had a bad advance. Steen and Generico are your hometown baby faces. There's no show-to-show build, so this is a first-time market. Eric Stevens and Kenny King would have the opener, according to Gabe. And he says this would be a solid opener, make a statement, Ring of Honor style wrestling, and it would be Eric Stevens over Kenny King. What we'll do, I think, is we'll read Gabe's show, and then we'll just tell you what the results were from Adam's show.
Yeah. And you pick.
And
you guys can pick. Listeners out there can pick which ones you like better. Cause
maybe we'll run a poll.
For me, it was a pretty clear which ones I ultimately preferred.
I have a sneaking suspicion if we ran a poll One side would get 100%, the other side would get 0%.
0.0.
That's right, Mr. Blutarski. That's, I think, 2 or 3 shows in a row we've had an Animal House reference?
Probably.
Not anything wrong with that. He would bookend the angle, possibly to open the show, leading to the main event, which we'll get to in a minute. Kenny Omega. A lot of guys named Kenny on this show. Kenny Omega over Rhett Titus. Rhett needed to have a good showing. This would build Kenny Omega, who was a part of the plans for 2009.
My thought with that, Gabe made a good point, is like that Rhett in the months prior had shown he could do it as far as a character, but as he says, this is Ring of Honor. You need to have good matches to sell the DVDs, and so now he was putting Rhett in a position to have those matches.
We would next see Eddie Edwards over Jay Briscoe. This is a traditional ROH style match. Necro Butcher over Mark Briscoe in a street fight. This is their first singles match. It's fresh to the market. Necro would go over. And he calls the Briscoes ROH legends, which is 100% true. Bryan Danielson and Austin Aries would team up to take on Tyler Black and Jimmy Jacobs with a tag team title shot in Dayton. And on the line, Aries and Danielson would go over, and there would be this is a rematch from the pay-per-view. This plays the Aries Age of the Fall issue, and cross-pollinates a couple different stories in one match, which is always a good 2-for-1. He discusses card pacing. He says he wants to have a main event for each half of the show, which 100% true. You got to send those fans into intermission excited to go buy stuff at the merch table for intermission.
Especially if it was like new fans, because they're like, holy shit, did you see how awesome that fucking match with Bryan and Aries was? Are there any other DVDs where they're a tag team on? And the number of times that was actually what happened. More than I can possibly remember. Mary, my wife, worked a lot of the Northeast shows on the merch table, and she would say the same thing. Like, that match with Bryan and Nigel would get done, and fans would immediately come to the Ring of Honor at the merch table and ask for what other shows did they wrestle each other on? What other matches did those guys do that you recommend? And it worked. Having that sort of main events, first half main event, worked to push merchandise. And that's also sometimes why the shows would go longer too, because y'all motherfuckers would be buying a shit ton of merchandise, and we're not about to say no.
Yeah, intermission was generally scheduled for 20 minutes, and if it went 20 minutes, that was rare.
Yeah, especially in venues like the Manhattan Center, either up or downstairs, or in Chicago or anything like that. Because y'all came out and you bought.
Yep. He discusses the start of the second half. The IWS locals would go over some ROH school students. It's a popcorn segment. Brody Lee would run in and destroy everyone. Up next, Jerry Lynn over Delirious. Quote-unquote, 2 pros who would fit anywhere on the card. Then you would have a clean finish in this upcoming match. Shorter but more intense compared to the ROH in Japan match. Davey Richards would beat Roderick Strong. And the main event on this show would be a Champions Elimination match. Ring of Honor title on the line. Nigel McGuinness, Kevin Steen, El Generico, and Go Shiozaki, who is the FIP champ. He feels he booked himself into a corner, and he had to cover up. He feels like Kevin Steen and El Generico should have a double team win, pinning Go. And then the other one would quickly be eliminated and then have a long match with Nigel and whoever was healthiest. Not necessarily the main event I probably would have gone with here, but I think looking at the roster, the way it's set up, this makes total sense.
It was an interesting match to do. It wasn't something we had ever done before, and obviously it's stuck. Like, comparing the cards, I think the only matches that you get that stayed are matches we had already announced, probably, prior to Gabe being fired, because this is only a week turnaround, like 1 week. I can't remember the exact, but was it a 2 week between the shows? So
yeah, the 25th to the 7th.
I think there were some things that had probably already been announced that we kept. But there was a lot of conversation. Hell, there was conversation on the drive to, like, before I lost service crossing the border between me and Adam about, like, what we're doing. And stuff of that nature, and even trying to come up with names for the shows while we were driving to the shows. So it's interesting because I think the matches we did get, I don't know, I'm trying to think about a phrase this, like, these two shows I think are the closest to each other,
Yeah.
Like, as far as what we actually got, these two shows are the closest to each other as far as what Gabe would have booked versus what we got.
100% agreed. And, when you think about what was actually presented versus Gabe's initial idea, Gabe's whole idea was to start building guys toward the start of 2009. Adam kind of just jumped in and said, here's what we're doing. Let's go.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was any... I mean, Gabe talked about it on here. Some conversation. If it was on here, maybe, I don't remember now. There's something else I listened to, like some conversation between Adam and him.
Oh, yeah, that's later.
That's later, okay. Yeah. So I don't know if maybe Gabe provided Adam with a little bit of, this is what I was doing or where I was going. I don't recall. I do recall being asked, do you know where we were going with some of this stuff? And some of the stuff I did. And again, like I said, I didn't know the finer points, just the big picture of some of it. And some of it was just completely like, all right, well... we're just going to change things. We're going to blow up the world and decide we're going to have DQs and countouts. Sort of stuff like that. But it was... like I look at them and I'm... I don't know. Do you want to cover what we ended up getting?
Yeah, I'll read those results quickly and then we can move on to Toronto the next day. So... we've got a dark match. Stupefied would defeat Dan Paisan, XS, and the Green Phantom. Those are the IWS guys. Eric Stevens would defeat Bobby... I see Bobby's name. Eric Stevens would defeat Eddie Edwards, who is with Bobby Dempsey, Davey Richards, Larry Sweeney, and our illustrious co-host, Shane Hagedorn. The Briscoes would defeat Kenny King and Kenny Omega. The Necro Butcher would defeat Brody Lee by disqualification. Jerry Lynn would defeat Delirious with Jimmy Jacobs. Davey Richards with Bobby Dempsey, Eddie Edwards, Larry Sweeney, and Shane Hagedorn would defeat Roderick Strong. And Austin Aries, Bryan Danielson would defeat the Age of the Fall. And the main event is the four-way elimination match. Nigel would defeat El Generico, Go Shiozaki, and Kevin Steen. 31 minutes, 26 seconds on your main event.
So this show holds... I'm pretty positive you can say this show holds the distinction of having the very first disqualification finish.
Yeah.
Because we'd either have a non-finish or a winner. We didn't do DQs. We didn't do countouts. So the
Necro Butcher, the very first disqualification winner in ROH history.
And
a guy who's a street fighter.
And Brody being thrown into matches versus being built up by the squashes as Gabe intended. It was weird. Like, it's a weird comparison because you have the Kennys, the team of the Kennys that were just
thrown together.
And I even remember that was a whole conversation that stemmed out of I don't know what to do with certain people, and Alex actually kind of the suggestion, because obviously we're not going to go into the show in extreme detail, but that match ends with Rhett taking Kenny King away from the match and Kenny King leaving with Rhett for Rhett to join the YRR. That idea came from Alex Payne, which I then pitched to Pierce, and we went with that. yeah, it made fucking wrap up of that tag match against the Briscoes awkward as shit and weird, but that was the why, was how do we put them together, and that's kind of what you ended up with there. But for the most part, like the two cards are so they're pretty similar. They're almost not, aside from 2 matches, I think they're identical.
Yeah, it was just the execution that was different.
Yeah.
So that takes us to Toronto on November 8th, 2008.
Well, all this hard work has earned something, and that something is rest. But not just any rest. Optimal performance starts with sleep. That is why you need Linebacker Mattress. Linebacker mattresses are specifically designed and built for people with active lifestyles. Just like the guys and gals you hear us talk about on an honorable mention every Tuesday. If you put greater demand on your body is going to demand a greater quality of sleep. Working with professional football players Bobby Wagner and Doug Baldwin, alongside sleep study expert Dr. Gregory Jantz, Linebacker Mattress has created a complete line of mattresses to meet the needs of those who require more from their body. The entire line offered by Linebacker Mattress is engineered to address the primary 4 points of mattress comfort. Say it with me at home, I know you hear them every week. Pressure relief, proper support, relief from excess heat, and relief from excess moisture. Linebacker Mattress is the only foam mattress that offers extra lumbar support, 2+ inches of serene foam, STA cool gel, and the highest density memory foam available. Customers can buy with the utmost in confidence, knowing that there is an 89-day rest test. If you forget how many days there are in your rest test, Google Doug Baldwin. His jersey number is your answer. If the mattress is not right for you, upon request, customers will receive a full refund, and that includes the price of shipping. So check out linebackermattress.com and shop at Linebacker Mattress today. Linebackermattress.com, linebackermattress.com.
So Gabe loved Toronto, which I think we all agree it's a great city. He says it's an A+ market, like Chicago and New York. And as
this wasn't Toronto, though.
This was
Markham.
Markham. So this is outside.
Fairground.
Yeah. So I don't think Gabe realized it was a different building.
No, I just did it as that. But yeah, this was Markham, which was the
it's the dust, like the dust arena, right? Or
it was the fairgrounds that we went to. Yeah, when we went to for the first time. And this may have been the first time there. It was. We got into there and Sid swore up and down because it was like a rodeo building.
Yeah, that's what
we literally were setting up tarps on top of dirt, and Sid swore up and down that when they showed him this building, it was paved, there was concrete down here. He swore up and down, and we were all like, "Yep, they just removed the concrete before we got here and put us on dirt." Like either they showed you a different building, or you're just full of shit. But he was so vehement about swearing that that there was concrete there. It was a real floor, not dirt. That it was just hilarious. That's my memory of fucking Markham.
Oh, Sid. Well, Gabe says Toronto was a moneymaker market or a break-even market. That was always the goal. And that the other considerations he had were Stina Generico, home country, no return for months, so no show-to-show booking. And then he gets into his card. And I thought this was a pretty good-looking card. Eric Stevens over Delirious. He says Delirious brings the energy, and he notes the Orlando shows that took place in March. About how Delirious opened each show with a lot of energy to get the crowd going, ramp them up. And especially in a bigger market, maybe early on they're not necessarily into it too much if it's not a big time match. So he's right on the money there. And his second match was Tyler Black over Kenny Omega. And he details that this would be a 12 to 15 minute match. No false finishes. They wanted to steal the show and make people want more. He wanted to showcase Tyler Black versus someone who isn't a main eventer. So a competitive match. And of course there'd be a post-match promo from Tyler Black talking about needing change. He wanted Tyler to get better at live promos because he knew he needed to work on it, and he's going to need it at Final Battle.
Yeah. We all knew he needed to work on his live promos.
And in some cases, his taped ones.
Yeah. It took a while.
Yeah, and it's clicked now, so, it's not an easy thing. People think promos are a very easy thing. They are not.
For some people, they're more natural than others, though.
Yes, agreed, 100%. Up third would be Bryan Danielson over Eddie Edwards. And I don't know if we ever got this one-on-one match, but color me intrigued and sign me up, because I would buy a ticket to see this.
I'm trying to wrap my brain if we did or not.
Dayton, maybe?
I don't know. Give me a minute.
But I'll continue onward while you're researching there. Gabe says Bryan is number one in ROH history. There's no hesitations in terms of stating that. He ranks him over Joe, Punk, Low-Key, Daniels, etc. And he says he wanted a slower match, which Bryan was good for, than the second match on the show, and he wanted them to go about 8 to 10 minutes. Of course, Bryan goes over. Up next, we would see Davey Richards over Jerry Lynn. This would be a clean victory. Take note that Davey Richards and Tyler Black are the only two people to pin Jerry Lynn clean during his last run, last shot at the title storyline, similar to the Wrestler movie. The Jerry Lynn promo on the DVD would appear, and he would talk about working harder to earn a title shot. One of the other facets of the match would be Strong would save Jerry Lynn from a post-match sweet and sour beatdown, and there would be no cooperation between Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong, who would both be out to save Jerry Lynn. Coming up next, and this is right before intermission, this is a dog collar match between Jimmy Jacobs and Austin Aries. Jacobs would go over Austin Aries and tie their feud heading into the I Quit match in Chicago at 1-1. The only way for the feud to end is to end it in Chicago. And I think that's, the right direction. You don't want to go 2-0 in a best-of-3 series. Kind of cuts the fans short that we're looking forward to things. Although an idea of sweeping a best-of-3 series would be interesting to me.
Yeah.
Something to think about going forward. Take note, Hunter. The FIP title would open up post-intermission. Go Shiozaki would defeat Roderick Strong and Kenny King. Go would pin Kenny. And he likes, and this is something we've talked about off the air, Gabe likes when fans got mad that guys would go on losing streaks. And he really enjoyed that. Like, he almost looked kind of giddy talking about it. And
by the way, the answer was at a cut above in Dayton. You were right.
Thank you.
For Bryan and Eddie.
My mind is not so bad sometimes.
Yep. He also wrestled in 2CW.
Syracuse.
In 2007.
Yep. Okay. So fans would get their pop when that guy finally won. And there were a lot of those losing streaks over the years in Ring of Honor, under Gabe especially. So far, where are you at with this card? What do you think?
I'm a big fan of this card. I told you, like, that three-way, I would have dug that three-way. With the Go and Roddy and Kenny Kane. Like,
Kenny flying all over the place, Roddy bumping him, Shiozaki just hitting hard.
I mean, as awesome as that New York three-way is, that with Eric in there, with Go and Roddy, it's like you have three very similar styles with the hard hitting. Kenny would have offered a different flavor to that would have, I think, really accentuated the match. And I would have been pretty down to see that one.
A pace changer.
Yeah.
But pretty stacked show so far, and we're not even toward the main event portion of the night. Necro Butcher would defeat Nigel McGuinness. Some sort of easy win, like a roll-up, or Necro's awesome victory roll that he did.
It was an impressive sight to see a guy the size of Necro, like, on somebody's shoulders doing, his best Owen Hart impersonation.
And like Necro,
or Bret Hart, I mean.
Knowing Necro, like his affinity for that move, he loved doing that as his finish. I've talked to him about it before, and that was like his favorite thing. He'd do like a death match, and that would be his finish. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, it makes no sense. But then you look at how goofy Necro is. Perfect.
Change it. Do a victory roll.
Yeah, do a victory roll. And then Gabe says if he catches on from the movie, the wrestler, he would consider putting the belt on him, either the ROH belt or the FIP belt, for 4 to 6 weeks. So that answers one message board question that has frequently asked: would Necro Butcher have gotten a title run?
I would have seen more likely the FIP.
Yeah, I would agree. Or maybe a mid-card belt created at this point would have been ideal. I mean, look at your roster at this point.
Yeah.
You needed a secondary singles belt.
I don't ever, remember. I was never involved in any conversation at that point about creating one. And obviously we didn't.
For a while.
Again, after the Pure title was gone, we did not again until the TV title came in, so...
and then Gabe notes that right now, after this match, he wants them back in the locker room at 10:10 p.m. That would be ideal for him. If
in reality, it was probably 10:10 a.m.
Yes. And then the main event is Steen and Generico defending their tag team titles against the Briscoes, and it would be a 45-minute draw, which you and I have talked about this as well. I don't ever remember a 45-minute time limit announced. 60, 30, I remembered, but 45 was kind of something I don't remember.
I was trying to remember if Tag Title Classic was 45 minutes or an hour.
I thought it was 60. But this would be the first time these two teams had touched.
No, it was 45. It was 45. I just looked real quick. It was a 45-minute draw. So, but still, that actually happening was several months after this, because that was a Pierce booking.
Yep.
When we came back to Markham the next year. So Gabe booking this would have been the first ever tag team title draw in Ring of Honor history. Would have actually been done at the end of 2008 instead of 6 months later in 2009.
Yeah, ahead of the curve. Maybe not 20 or 30 years according to the style of booking, but Gabe was always out in the future there. The story would be a ton of false finishes. At the end, the Steen and Generico, of course, would take a huge beat down, and the Briscoes would fully turn heel, destroying Steen and Generico. And Steen and Generico still have not cleanly beat the Briscoes. So you're continuing the story. He said that Brody Lee would also destroy people randomly and no-sell everything.
I just like that idea. I do.
I would have had him going through the crowd and destroying plants.
What would have actual plants?
No, okay. Like people. People
funnier.
Plant. Oh, of course.
Out of an over there talking to a plant, and he would have just came up and destroyed it. So, no, what's cool about the Brody stuff to hear Gabe talk about it is that he was part of the ring crew when I started. I've mentioned it before in previous episodes. Brody Lee, Bobby Fish, Cheech, Cloudy, what's his face that was on ECW for a bit, Colin Delaney. Those were the guys, Logan DeVito's kids. Those were the guys that predated the Ring of Honor school as the ring crew. So to see him come back around. Because I don't ever remember him even getting so much as a dark match, much less, he was gone by the time we started doing pre-shows. So Brody never even got a dark match out of it that I can at all remember. So to see it come back around and be used in a featured position like that, that would have been pretty cool. And it was cool that he did get a spot, under Adam, but it was not at all what it sounds as if like Gabe had intended here. I don't think he was at all used his potential for his brief stint in Ring of Honor here in 2009.
No, and he was very much a guy that was just so ready for a big spot, and could have been brought in a year earlier, to be honest.
And Grizzly Redwood will tell you that he taught Brody everything he knows.
Oh, I heard that's fact.
That is fact.
100%.
Yep.
He compares Brody Lee's positioning and style similar to how Abyss was in the Embassy for all of like 2 shows or whatever it was.
They just all happen to be in Cleveland too.
Yeah, really. Like Cleveland and Buffalo, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Except that he said Abyss sold too much, which now that I think about it,
I agree.
Aside from when Abyss like beat up, Davey Andrews and the Dempseys or whoever it was that he beat up that day. He sold. I definitely remember him selling a little too much for the monster role.
100%. So the actual show that we got, brought to you by Adam Pearce, is the dark match of the Super Smash Brothers, who were kind of popular around this time. They would defeat Ernie Osiris and Ninja Yellow. Who is Ninja Yellow? Ridge?
Maybe. That's most likely to me. Would have been like that time frame. Andy Ridge, Celso Rivera. But I would have to go back and watch the shows and see if I can see who was doing security roles. Then I could piece it together, or if I can find pictures. But right leg sounds like a very likely.
Mm-hmm. So then we would open the show with Davey Richards defeating Jerry Lynn.
This is a solid choice for an opener as well, as Erica Delirious would have been.
Yes. And I think this exemplifies the ROH style of the time perfectly. You make a statement, in your return to this market. Bobby Dempsey, Eddie Edwards, and Shane Hagedorn, my co-host, are ringside, of course. Kenny King and Rhett Titus would have their very first tag match together. They're not the All Night Express just yet, and they would defeat the Age of the Fall of Brody Lee and Delirious by countout. This is where there's a big sigh.
I was like even trying to remember this stuff, and I'm like,
I can tell you I've never seen this show.
Because it was still awkward. It was like, because putting the Rhett and Kenny were together here because Rhett was part of the YRR in Florida, so why not make him part of the entire thing in Ring of Honor proper as well.
Right.
So
you cut out,
like you said, it was just that awkward transition that was in Montreal.
Yeah.
Just to like, all right, how do we get to this? Just do it. Fuck it.
It's like ripping a Band-Aid off.
Yeah. But this is I don't know.
In a match that I would love to go out of my way and watch, Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong would team up and defeat Sweet and Sour Inc.'s Eddie Edwards and Go Shiozaki with Shane Hagedorn at ringside. Any memories of that particular match? Sounds like a hell of a just slugfest.
I'm just trying to remember if that was if this is which of the shows in Markham was Sweeney at this show?
No.
Oh, but Sweeney was in Montreal.
I don't see Sweeney listed anywhere.
Okay. I was trying to remember. If this is the match I'm thinking of, because I can't remember if it was this Markham show or the next one, was that I was asked to introduce the match with a promo, and then I didn't even get to the point of announcing of doing the promo because Pierce just thought I was taking too long and just hit the music for the people.
I assume Sweeney was under the weather.
Yeah. I know he was definitely not in Markham that day. And I had to go out there and
figure out how to get around.
Basically, I was just supposed to go out there and say, hey, Sweeney's not here. Here's the team of Eddie and go. And just bring them out. And I think I at this point, I was like mentally running my own little angle of me kind of being disheveled and, heartless because my man, because, I'm no longer have a man. I'm no longer a manservant to somebody because Pierce was gone.
Right.
So I was just like, I kind of took my time with the promo, and I remember the fans like giving me shit. And I'm just like, I'm having a hard time here. Was the line I remember saying, and then Adam just started playing the music, and I remember coming back and being like, that took way too fucking long. It should have been like 30 seconds just to introduce the team. I was just like, it wasn't about getting your stuff over, it was just about introducing the team. I'm like, whatever. I just decided to do whatever. That's my memory of this match.
Ay. Well, we'd have a dog collar match. Austin Aries would defeat Jimmy Jacobs in 18 minutes. Singles match. Grizzly Redwood over show favorite Alex Payne, which is a curious decision around this time. Maybe get some momentum for Grizzly, but I think Alex was much more prepared to be elevated around this time than Grizz.
Nah, I don't know. That's a toss-up for me. I think this was literally just a match that was, look.
It's your popcorn match.
It's your popcorn match, and it's like, look, here, I am going to give you guys an opportunity on a main show, sort of thing.
Then we would have a three-way dance with Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, and Tyler Black. Bryan Danielson would go over there. Necro Butcher would defeat Nigel McGuinness, but by disqualification.
And in a title match instead of non-title.
Yes. And then
I think the general consensus was why not just give him a fucking title match? I remember Ross being really hot. Like, just give Necro a fucking title match. He doesn't have to win it. Like, just why not? And then it was we got our first ever DQ in a world title match for Ring of Honor.
So Necro
kind of was like, ugh.
Necro racking up the disqualifications.
Yeah, like we just shove it in the fans' face that first weekend, and beat it to death in 2 shows. Like, have one on each show. Might as well. I don't know why we didn't throw in a 20 count out, a 20, because that was a debate too going into these shows. We're going to start doing count outs.
There was a count out in the Age of the Fall.
Oh yeah. We're going to start
match.
So we're going to start doing count outs. And it was just like, okay, let's at least do 20s if we're going to do them. Like, if we're the more Japanese inspired influence company, let's at least do the 20 counts, not the fucking 10 counts.
And then our main event, Kevin Steen and El Generico would defeat the Briscoes cleanly for the very first time, 16 minutes, 27 seconds. Back to America.
Well, I think looking back on the other side of the card, like compared to Gabe and some, you kind of get that Eric and Roddy team, and it doesn't really feel...
Makes no sense.
At this point, it didn't really feel like they should be teaming.
No.
As opposed to the structure and the layout that Gabe continues to discuss as we go forward. So it seems quite early.
Very early.
To put them together.
Very early, and it had no build.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you did the partners that hate each other thing, but they didn't really even do that. Based on what I read. So, we would head to Dayton, Ohio on November 21st, 2008. I was at this show. And boy, oh boy.
We like to call this killing a town softly.
Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
Between this and Reckless, Gabe even admits it. That he failed on the show before this too. I don't know if he says failed, but just that.
Oh, he said the June show sucked.
Okay, yeah, the June show sucked. So between the June show and this show, we fucking the June show kidnapped Dayton. This show put a gun to his head, and I guess. The next show after this was the pulling the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's not entirely true, because the cut above did have, the Jerry and Roddy match was good. And,
with Roddy's blood all over the floor.
Mm-hmm. But this was definitely a series of doing no fucking favors to Dayton.
Nope, not to the Montgomery County Fairgrounds. It deserved better.
The show that you actually got did no favors.
No.
At all.
So, none of these matches are in any particular order. But Gabe did note the shows in June sucked and that he wanted payback. I noted after Gabe saying the June show
it was
sucked.
Battle for Supremacy. That's what it was.
I said, spoiler alert, it did.
Yeah, that was the Nigel and Pierce match with the dusty finish and me getting dropped on my fucking head by Albright, unintentionally this time, just the way I landed from a suplex. And yeah, I remember the fireball. Yep, okay. It's coming back to me.
So we head into this show with Gabe's ideas kind of roughly sketched out. Tyler Black and Jimmy Jacobs would team up to take on Nigel and Claudio. He says this is a possible first half main event. Tyler would pin Nigel and solidify his title shot at Final Battle. Nigel says to come at him, and Nigel, of course, would stay a babyface. He's always a babyface in Dayton. They would have a back and forth session with microphone. So, a good chance for Tyler Black to work on his mic work in front of Dayton as a babyface against a babyface.
And doing it with somebody who's not going to bury him on the microphone intentionally just to expose that he's not good on the microphone.
Right.
Or there are people on this roster that I could completely see if they were in that situation, purposely trying to make somebody like, look, that person's not good on the microphone. I'm going to outshine them purposefully.
Speaking of people who love burying other people, Austin Aries and Bryan Danielson. Actually, it should be Austin Aries, and Bryan Danielson, because Austin Aries loves burying people, even though he's not as tall as a shovel. And he would take on those two, a.k.a. Team Work, as they were named after the Chicago shows. We take on Steen and Generico. This is a possible second half main event. Tag titles on the line. And Aries does the job because he's going heel. Spoiler alert. And I noted he's also a little person with a giant ego.
I dug this stuff that we ended up getting with Aries. Like, I really think it's a more artistic. Aries started painting and it was the little things, and that he was doing at this time. I talked about it before, how much I really enjoyed this. Like, he was painting his fingernails. He was starting to wear like eyeliner. He was just letting his fucking hair grow and not like doing anything to it. He was starting to look a little more Age of the Fall part. Whilst feuding with the Age of the Fall. It was I was enjoying that you could watch them almost like Jimmy and Aries kind of becoming the same person. I know
they were molding each other through their violent tendencies.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good thing that Gabe started.
And to me, I mean, I bag on Austin Aries on this show because I don't like him personally, but the wrestler Austin Aries is a very different person than Austin Aries the person, Dan Sowell the person. And his work in the ring at this time was spectacular. Because he had slowed himself down just a little bit to where his body language was even fitting the mold of Age of the Fall. Like, he was fully invested in the character, much like we would see when he became the greatest manager that ever lived. Proclaimed greatest manager that ever lived. His body language was different, and body language is so important in professional wrestling. It may be the number one thing a promoter checks off if they're going to give somebody a push.
And I think I've mentioned this before a while ago. Aries was an example Gabe used for me early on in my career as a person to watch his body language and how he stood and how he was like, despite being 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", whatever Aries is, Gabe was like, despite his height, watch the way he carries himself out to the ring, and that's something to to attempt to not what's the word I'm looking for? Not imitate, but kind of achieve and go for that similar look where you're carrying yourself in a way that you seem bigger than you actually are. And Aries was great at that. A lot of guys are, but Aries was the one that Gabe specifically used as an example of that.
And he's 100% right. I think that's the perfect example of a guy that literally, I mean, his body language makes him look presentable on TV, and it adds a layer of credibility to a guy that doesn't look like he could fight his way out of a wet paper bag. This would follow a lights out match with Roderick Strong over Chris Hero. He wanted to re-deliver that to the market after it was the lone good thing in the June show. Of course, that was Chris Hero and Pele Primo. And I don't remember anything else that was good on that show, so I'll take Gabe's word for it.
No, it was Chris and Roddy in there. Wasn't it Chris and Roddy in just the regular match? Or was it Chris and Pele in the lights out match?
I think it was Chris and Pele.
I know Chris and Pele had a lights out match. I just don't remember if it was in Dayton or if it was. Yeah.
I thought it was in Dayton, but whatever.
Yeah.
He mentions that he has storyline arcs in each town, which is something that, was definitely true. Nigel being a babyface in Dayton is a perfect example of that when he's a heel everywhere else.
Yeah.
Kenny King versus Delirious versus Grizzly Wedwood versus Rhett Titus versus Mark Briscoe versus Ruckus. He notes too many people booked on the show, but it was a necessary evil. All guys need a win in the match, but Grizzly Redwood would not be one because he would never win per Gabe. Talk about burying your wrestling school.
No. I mean, what he says is right. I would agree. I agree with what Gabe said in there that Grizzly doesn't need, that's his role. I mean, look at fucking, the Mikey Whipwreck role, I suppose you can call it. I mean, I guess I would imagine eventually Grizz would get the big win, but it was kind of in a similar vein to, Pele just got beat to death all the time, and then when he does get the big win, the crowd surfing, in that match of against Jimmy Rave, you can build up to that big first win if you tell that story. But I get not necessarily giving Grizz a win for a while. If you tell the story, if you're just doing it without making a story out of it, it just seems, yeah. But again, Grizz, especially later on in his career, Grizz is fucking great at making people look $1 million.
Yeah, he's a professional wrestler that has honed his craft.
Yeah. Watch him now, and he can make anybody look fucking great.
So shout out to Grizzly Redwood. I think you should have won the match.
At this point, in 2009, 2008, Grizzly should not have won this match.
Why not? Doesn't matter. It's a six-way.
Because you have Kenny King and Delirious and Mark.
I mean, none of those guys were going anywhere at that point.
No, but with Gabe's story of wanting to build Kenny up through the slowly, and eventually having him be a top guy by the end of and going into 2009.
All right, so we'll give Kenny King the win here.
All right.
Hypothetically speaking, I guess.
We're fantasy booking the fantasy booking now.
Yes. Yes, that's the point we've reached to with this DVD. Davey Richards over Eric Stevens, Jerry Lynn versus Brent Albright. He says maybe Jerry Lynn goes to a 15-minute draw. Albright would not, however, win. So maybe Jerry Lynn goes over. Shimmer tag belts. Continue.
I'm saying no, and the number one contenders match on the line. I don't fucking want Brent Albright going over.
Gabe didn't clarify it was a number one contender match.
He just said maybe.
Maybe
that was one of his maybe it'll go 15 minutes, maybe make it a number one contenders match. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So Albright would definitely not go anywhere here. Would you like to elaborate on why Gabe did not believe in Brent Albright at this point? Because he was clearly getting huge reactions in certain buildings.
I'm trying to think if they ever had a conversation with Gabe about that or not. 'Cause at this point, Yeah, I can't remember if I ever had a conversation with Gabe about Brent, like that in that regards. And plenty of conversations with Brent and Pierce and prior to all of this about their mutual misery at times, especially after the New York match. But
how could they hate anything after the New York match? We'll save that for the
for the afterwards, like the conversation that happened in the upstairs locker room after the match happens.
Because I was out with Albright after that, and that's, well, we'll save that story too.
Yeah,
because that's another great one. So then, of course, he mentions they're going to have a Shimmer Tag Belts match. Ashley Lane, who is Madison Rayne. Coincidentally, she used to work at the Chili's about 2 minutes from my house. And Nevaeh would would wrestle Mischief and Rain. He says Mischief is in the plans and he loves Rain. I like Rain too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he loved Mischief.
So he's got a couple plans for Mischief and Rain. Lane and Nevaeh, or whatever her name is.
It's Nevaeh. It's heaven spelled
backwards. Oh, how genius!
I was a Christ.
I was gonna say, is this the one married to?
Maybe. I think so. I'm not 100% on that, but I feel like that's the case.
So they're local Ohio people, so you can come in and do a job. Jay Briscoe over Jigsaw, which that probably would have been great. Brody Lee would have a spot on the show, but he didn't know what he was going to do with him quite yet. Go was also booked for this show, but was not part of Gabe's plans. Eddie Edwards was in Europe around this time. The actual card. Dark match, Alex Payne and Ninja Blue. I don't know who Ninja Blue could be at this point.
Yes, it could have been Rob Wolf, could have been Celso Rivera, could have been Andy Ridge. I don't remember when the Bravados started training, but I don't remember if they ever did ninja stuff. I don't recall. I don't remember if. I also can't remember if the ninjas were consistent in terms of color. Like right leg was always ninja yellow.
No, I think they rotated them just to throw them off. I think that was the smart plan. But they would defeat an unknown and Richard Matthews, who I have no idea who that is. Bobby Dempsey would defeat Ninja Yellow. Brent Albright would open the show, defeating Davey Richards with Bobby Dempsey, Chris Hero, and Larry Sweeney. I don't know why you weren't at ringside for that.
I don't remember. I really don't remember at all. I didn't do shit on this show.
No.
I don't know why. I have no idea why. I think I made this. No, I do know why. Now that I think about it, to continue my mental idea of not caring and losing your shit, losing my smile without Adam being around. Even this is not something I ever like. I just started doing it. I didn't talk about it even with Adam. I think I literally pulled myself off the show to kind of push that further and just kind of like wandered around in like street clothes.
Like around at the show?
Because eventually...
I saw you afterwards, I know that.
I think I wandered around like in street clothes. Because I remember it was the Florida shows after this that we would be in 2009 that me and Sweeney did the promo where Sweeney told me to get my shit together and start dressing the part. And then I slowly started adding in like a dress shirt or dress pants or whatever. But yeah, so
the jacket.
It was all just... I think I pulled myself off like from going out there to push this idea.
So Albright and Richards, they had a fun opening match from what I remember. I enjoyed it. Four Corner Survival, Go Shiozaki would defeat Grizzly Redwood, Rhett Titus, and Sami Callihan.
Oh, I thought you were going to say show favorite.
Yeah, Not this show.
Schwartz favorite.
Yeah, no thanks. The Briscoes would defeat also show favorites, the Irish Airborne, Dave and Jake Crist. This is the match that Mark Briscoe, I believe, blew out his knee. I mean, like
trying to keep a record of when Mark got hurt.
Not easy.
Yeah.
It's like me doing regular math.
No.
Lights out match. Chris Hero with Bobby Dempsey, Davey Richards, and Larry Sweeney versus Roderick Strong would go to a no contest.
Because why not? Because that's what we do in Ring of Honor.
I remember
no contests and DQs and countouts.
I remember after the match talking to Kerry Silkin about how that was the stupidest fucking finish to a match I've ever seen in my life. And he goes, yeah, we're working on some things right now. Oh boy. El Generico, Kevin Steen would defeat the Age of the Fall of Delirious and Jimmy Jacobs with Alice in Wonderland. Tag titles on the line there, of course. Bryan Danielson would defeat Claudio Castagnoli, who is with Alice in Wonderland for some reason.
I looked at it and I saw the results page. I'm like, that can't be true. That had to have just been a typo from that fucking website.
Possibly.
There's no way. That makes no sense.
I don't remember it, but when I copied and pasted it into the format.
Yeah, I know. That just makes no sense. So that had to have been a typo on Cage Match's part.
But I remember this match being really good. Bryan over Claudio. And then a three-way non-title. Austin Aries would defeat Nigel McGuinness and Tyler Black. 13 minutes on that one. So a much shorter show.
That'll be... I can't wait to talk about that one if we ever get around to doing Escalation by itself. Just suffice to say that match never should have fucking happened. And that was not what was booked.
I know what the original plan was. I was not looking forward to this three-way. I hate three-way matches across the board, just as a general rule. So this moves us into Chicago. It's a pay-per-view.
Oh, yeah. That one, that is another win column in Gabe.
Oh, 100%.
Comparing cards.
Yeah. So far, Gabe is up 3-0.
Yeah.
So we go to Chicago. This is November 22nd. Our considerations are as follows. Pay-per-view. Return in December, so there is a quick turnaround. There's a new format to the pay-per-views. He wanted to do an ECW format where each match bleeds into the next.
Which we kind of saw with like New Horizons and Driven. We commented on that. They just kind of bled one into another. It's not that we joked that was because of the music.
Yeah, it's quick to get out of doing the music. He mentions that FIP fans don't know the ROH product, and it got everyone a chance to intro the talent and know the babyface and the heel, so he wanted to mix in a little bit more of a personality piece. I didn't know there were actual FIP fans, so that's cool.
I think that was how what I got from that was he was using that as the comparison point of like, all right, so you bring these Ring of Honor guys down to FIP, and the fans down there don't know them. You know, they see no difference between. This is his theory. Like, the fans going to the show see no difference between Bryan Danielson and Steve Madison.
Right.
You know. So I think the point was looking at the pay-per-view audience in the same way. Like, they don't know who the fuck Bryan Danielson is versus, you know, Grizzly Redwood in terms of importance. So you had created these little personality profiles, and they're like the little bumpers that we saw between, you know, that kind of would highlight, you know, a person's specific like move set, or, you know, just a quick video package of them, just to build them up in pay-per-view world. It makes sense completely.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I kid about FIP. I actually was a huge FIP fan. I love Memphis, so we would have a dark match on this show. Samoa Joe and Chris Hero. And Joe was a ticket mover. He was added to the show to sell tickets. They wanted it to look super full for pay-per-view. Easy choice to use him, despite not wanting him back, according to Gabe. He needed a heel sacrifice for Samoa Joe. He puts over Hero as a hustler and says that Joe would win clean.
Which makes sense. I mean, the hero's not going to suffer from losing to Joe. And it was the match we never got. We talked about it back at the CZW, episode in the archives. The one match we never got.
And on YouTube.
The one match we never got was Hero and Joe as singles.
Claudio would be booted off the pay-per-view. And the whole show, he would be killing people during the crowd, or I guess like during the show, building into him versus Bryan on the next pay-per-view.
So that was interesting because I'd have to go back and watch Driven, because Gabe says it was a fallout from Driven of him attacking a referee or whatever, because Driven was the previous pay-per-view to this. And I don't remember that at all, but the only thing I remember about Driven off the top of my head is Kevin and Generico win the belts.
Right.
But this was part of Gabe's, as we talked about before, is pay-per-view to pay-per-view continuity. But it's not as evidenced by what we ended up getting. One, I don't remember if this being banned from pay-per-view thing was ever something we announced, because I certainly didn't know that. I don't recall that. And if it's something we had announced, it's something that we would have conveyed to Adam that this is part of a story. Because some of it was, like I said before, what were we doing? Where were we going with certain things? Like, oh yeah, we had this story of, Claudia was banned from being on the pay-per-views. So I don't know if it was something that was ever announced or something that was just in Gabe's head to do. Because you figure when you're not going to announce that until Driven actually airs, I guess.
Right.
And Driven didn't air until Gabe was gone.
Right.
So I don't think this Claudio thing was ever public knowledge, because y'all would have eaten us alive if we would have announced that and then just ignored it.
Yeah. It's true.
Fans would have fucking attacked us for that shit.
Especially like somebody as great as Claudio. You want to see that.
Yeah.
And I don't understand him kicking him off the pay-per-view anyways, because he usually has one of the better matches on the show, and isn't that what you're trying to draw people in for?
Telling the story, though.
I guess. So that would lead into him against Bryan on the next pay-per-view. Nigel McGuinness would beat Bryan Danielson. Oh my god, I almost used his corporate name. Nigel McGuinness would beat Bryan Danielson. This has been built, of course, since the very first pay-per-view. Respect is earned. Nigel would win clean, and this would solidify him as the man going into Final Battle versus Tyler Black, stronger than ever.
He slayed his last dragon.
Correct.
Pun totally intended on that one.
Shimmer title. This would be some exposure for Shimmer. Del Rey would defeat Mischief.
Shimmer. Stiffer. Shimmer. He can use the same voice.
Yeah. Well, it's the Gabe voice. It's like, when Bruce goes to Macho Man or Dusty. We just have Gabe and Homicide, and I don't know who else we have on this. Low-key. We got our own mix,
Yeah.
We have the I Quit match. Austin Aries versus Jimmy Jacobs. This is the third match in their 3-match series. Austin Aries would basically kind of mold himself into this killing machine during the match. Lacey would get Jimmy Jacobs to quit, however, by saying, "If you love me, you'll quit." And in the parking lot, it will be revealed that he did not stab Lacey. He threatened self-harm, and Lacey left the business. What the fuck?
That makes sense. That makes sense to me, because him threatening from the video to kill her in the parking lot of a fucking gym is a total what the fuck. So him threatening him to hurt himself, I think, plays along with Jimmy's character much more than him threatening to kill her.
That's just a weird topic, though, that I don't know if it fits wrestling.
But it fits. Gabe said going for the artistic bent to this storyline, and Jimmy's character was not one that would harm Lacey. That was.
And you did lose a key cog to this story with Lacey moving to China around this time.
Yep.
So who knows where things would have gone. It's really a shame. I know she's gone on to become a doctor of some sort. Or Is she get a doctorate? Something like that. I saw it on Facebook. I don't know. But this is just, I don't know, very weird. And then there would be an Ultimate Endurance match for the tag team titles. El Generico and Kevin Steen would take on Ruckus and Jigsaw, and the Phoenix Twins, Tweak and Dash.
I didn't understand that when me and Alex were talking about that, like why Gabe was high on them. I just remember them.
Yeah.
I mean, to be completely politically incorrect about how to phrase it, they looked like cancer patients.
Yeah.
They did. They did. That was kind of like when you think of, what does somebody who's going through chemotherapy look like? That's what the Phoenix Twins looked like.
Yeah, and
I just know they did. I just know they did moves. But I don't remember why Gabe was high on them at all.
Your guess is good as maybe they paid him. I don't know.
No, I don't, and I don't have anything negative to say about them as person, as like individuals. I don't remember anything but some moves and Gabe being high on them. Obviously, by putting them on pay-per-view.
Yeah, without ever being on the main show before this. Maybe the last Chicago show, but I don't ever remember seeing them. I've seen them in AAW.
Yeah, I mean they at the very least had wrestled Darks before this.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if they did a main show on the Chicago show. The return, I guess it would have been Return Engagement.
Yeah.
Prior to all this.
And then your fourth team in the Ultimate Endurance is Delirious and Tyler Black. Tyler Black wins or beats two guys with his finishers, and Steen and Generico would go over on Delirious. So again, Tyler Black not getting pinned. Remember, the number one consideration, how does this benefit Tyler Black? It was Gabe's number one consideration for the rest of the year.
And then the awesomeness of continuity with that this pay-per-view would not air until after Tyler wins the belt, the final battle.
Correct. And
that's why Gabe talks about the fucking headaches from trying to make this shit make sense.
Yep. Steen and Generico would go over on Delirious, as I said. There'd be an angle with the Briscoes leading up to the next pay-per-view, which he clarifies and says, maybe another ladder war. I don't really want to go back to it, but maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I remember the statement after the first one of we're never doing another one. War. As far as Gabe was concerned, that was I remember being pretty we're not doing another one of those.
The Briscoes would defeat Eric Stevens and Brent Albright. The Briscoes would remain unbeaten on pay-per-view. That was one of my favorite pay-per-view storylines.
Yeah.
Roderick Strong would defeat Jerry Lynn. Roddy would go over. This would be a good wrestling match. Would open the show. Maybe an angle somewhere with Davey that's dark, for the DVD only. Who knows? He's not sure. He mentions that the Davey Richards pay-per-view squash match would be here, but it's an enhancement match, really. Davey would be built up for the future, look strong, and of course the 2009 headline story is going to be Tyler Black, Davey Richards as the centerpiece for ROH. The dark match would continue. Silas Young versus Claudio Castagnoli versus Kenny King. Gabe was concerned with how he's using Kenny King and wants to use him big going forward. He's got to find room for him. There's a new booker, so no reason to make no promises yet. But he encourages Adam to find room for him.
Well, that was an interesting thing Gabe talked about in this, was that, he felt obligated to people based on the promises he made as far as telling Kenny, he was using him in FIP regularly, but, if he was going to do the Ring of Honor thing, he made a commitment to him, and he wanted to honor those commitments however he could. And then, it's a valid point that, new booker comes in, new booker has none of those commitments to anybody. It's a valid thing, because the new booker is going to want to come in and start to paint their own picture,
He mentions Eric Stevens here, saying maybe he's admitting himself as a failing booker by how he's used Eric Stevens. That was his other example of a guy he made promises to. And then, of course, he talks about using him at FIP and giving him a good run at FIP with the title because he would lose on his first defense.
He puts over him and Roddy's FIP stuff really strong.
Fucking amazing. If you guys have High Spots Network out there, go check out the FIP stuff that's on there. You get most of the Roderick Strong Eric Stevens feud, and it's must-see TV.
And go listen to Eric talk about it on that PW Ponderings podcast.
Yeah.
It was pretty good stuff, too.
The other exclamation point on this discussion of the Chicago pay-per-view was Gabe finishes talking about Chicago saying, "That's Chicago, yay." And the way he does it was just so Gabe. I mean, that's the Gabe Sapolsky I remember.
Yeah.
Chicago, yay. The actual show was dark tag match with the Phoenix Twins, Dash and Tweak, taking on Aaron Scott and Grizzly Redwood. Phoenix Twins go over.
Aaron Scott was one of Davey's kids. Most famous in my head for ducking the cheerleader lariat on HDNet TV.
Oh, God. Moron. We would open with Kevin Steen and El Generico defeating the Briscoes in 6 minutes and 5 seconds.
1, we hadn't done it on pay-per-view. 2, Mark was hurt.
Yes. 6 minutes and 5 seconds.
It's ridiculously short, but Mark was hurt.
Do an angle where Jay has to fend for himself for a little while. Give him some credibility. Fuck.
It was that short to protect Mark. I know 100% on that.
He was hurt the night before, as we talked about with Dayton.
Yeah.
Then we would see the Shimmer title. Mischief would defeat Sarah Del Rey with Larry Sweeney. Delirious with Alice in Wonderland would defeat Rhett Titus. Claudio Castagnoli would defeat Alex Payne, Sammy Callahan, and Silas Young. Then there will be a 6-man tag. I remember this being a lot of fun. Sweet and Sour Inc., Chris Hero, Davey Richards, Go Shiozaki over Ace Steel, Brent Albright, and Roderick Strong.
Because we're in Chicago, so why not use Ace?
Yeah, and this was an amazing fucking match. Just Ace going crazy. It was like somebody let him out of his cage.
He did not stack the bodies to the sky, though.
No. Austin Aries with Lacey would defeat Jimmy Jacobs with Tyler Black in the I Quit match. And Nigel McGuinness would defeat Bryan Danielson. They would go 28 minutes and 8 seconds. Hell of a match.
Yeah.
And Samoa Joe would beat Tyler Black in the dark match to send the fans home.
Yep. Not happy, just home.
Yep.
So the one thing that stood out to this, when doing the card comparisons and thinking about it, listening to Gabe talk about Aries and Jimmy and what we actually did, then I started to think how much of this came from Gabe as far as the story that they concocted, how much of it was Jimmy, how much of it was Aries, how much of it was communicated to all three, because what we really do on this entire story arc, once Gabe leaves, is pretty similar to what Gabe explains. Mm-hmm. Between going into Final Battle and through Final Battle, it's not 100% identical, but it's such the same. And you can't go back and say, well, Gabe just, because as we pointed out, this is recorded before any of these shows ever happened.
Right.
So this is what Gabe, had planned.
And I think that lends credence to Jimmy Jacobs and Gabe being on the same page with storyline and direction, and Aries as well, because Aries is a big player here.
Mm-hmm.
Between the three of them, they're really putting together this very important central angle that is so different from everything else you're doing storyline wise, including the types of matches you're doing. This is a very important part of the Jimmy Jacobs legacy in ROH. And, kudos to Adam for continuing it.
Yeah, and just, like I said, letting it play out as, and in some ways, as was intended from Jump Street. obviously we don't get the conclusion that to 2008 that that it was being built towards, but we get a lot of the same story beats. We get a lot of the beats that Gabe had intended with.
It's like those old Goosebump books, the choose your own ending.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you, a friend, or family member struggling with drug or alcohol addiction? Your private insurance provider may be able to help. Banyan Treatment Center offers top-notch facilities and care at locations across the country. Give them a call to learn more. 1-800-508-0119. That's 1-800-508-0119.
Next, we would head to Nashville and St. Louis. This is December 5th and December 6th of 2008. And we, of course, talked about this St. Louis show in the archives. But you can check out the Nashville show. Maybe we'll do that at some point down the road. So your show
vomit all over that show.
Your show considerations are very important into this because these are the final two shows before Final Battle weekend. And I think the way these shows came off in reality is not how they were intended to be in the Gabe universe.
No. No.
By the way, Gabe is leading in the scorecard 4-0 right now.
Yeah. And I mean, as Gabe even says in that with these two shows, he's like, I didn't put them together in detail because what the fuck? There's too many fucking shows. But as we talked about before, we had to run shows to make money and travel to new markets to generate new fan bases. And I'll vent about running in fucking Vanderbilt whenever we actually cover Southern hostility. But running at the Gateway Center was not a bad thing.
No, you get to go on a brewery tour.
See.
Available in the archives, Wrestling at the Gateway. Check it out. One of our early shows. Actually, I think that may have been the first show in the new sound equipment.
Yeah, I think so.
So it sounds even better than all the other early stuff. Even if it was a Pierce show. Considerations. Too many shows! ! Too many blows before Final Battle weekend. So a lot of guys, not necessarily interacting, but you got to figure out what to do with people. So he says first time market, basic show, basic lineups, no show to show booking, no major angles created. St. Louis would definitely have Nigel over Jerry Lynn. He says this is the temporary end for Jerry Lynn. He could be brought back down the road as a disgruntled vet or part of the Age of the Fall.
I'd have dug that shit.
Oh, angry Jerry Lynn getting angry actually Jerry
in Age of the Fall, like that would have been
awesome.
Pretty cool.
Necro Butcher over Jimmy Jacobs. The Age of the Fall reigns terror. And then Nashville, Nigel McGuinness over Brent Albright or Necro Butcher. Bryan Danielson over Claudio Castagnoli. Claudio would get his heat back. And then he's got a couple other matches sketched out, but where and when they're going to be over the course of this weekend are to be determined. So we would have a Shimmer title, Sarah Del Rey over Mischief. Austin Aries and Delirious would have a double disqualification. Go Shiozaki would wrestle both Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong, one on each night. The Eric Stevens match probably would have been in St. Louis, which would set up a title match in Florida for Stevens to go over Go, and Stevens would set up a long title run. As we mentioned, Stevens was dropping the belt every first defense the previous times he had won. So, interesting storyline there. He says, in addition to that, anything but Stevens and Strong teams versus Sweet and Sour Inc., leading into Steel Cage Warfare and the Hammerstein. And he wanted more sports-influenced booking, no slow build in real sports, which is true. There's crazy, incredible stuff that can happen at any point in the game. There's no order, whereas in wrestling, you kind of build your card up for the first half and you build your card up in the second half. It says Tyler Black would have 2 wins and 2 live promos. Davey Richards would also go over clean each night, 2-0 with his finish. Jacobs and Tyler Black would finally have their split based on their philosophies. So this would be the official end of Tyler Black in Age of the Fall. He thinks in St. Louis he would do a mixed tag blow-off. Definitely not a one-on-one match, but a blow-off. Rhett and a partner of his choosing against a partner and Daisy Hayes.
It was interesting, his choice of words, given the landscape of 2018 wrestling and the amount of intergender matches that exist in almost every promotion. That he says, I'm not going to do a blow-off of Rhett versus Daisy because who would believe that?
And Gabe has stayed true to that philosophy in Evolve. There's been no intergender matches that I can recall.
I've never seen an Evolve show, so
they're fun.
No idea.
I enjoy it.
I've seen like one Dragon Gate USA show because the Bravados were on it, but I did not see any Evolve.
Yeah. It's still evolving.
Or maybe it was the other way around. I never saw any Dragon Gate USA, but I saw an Evolve show because
they work both.
Okay.
Oh, and
I remember Bird showed it to me.
Yeah. Well, we would also see the Briscoes against Kenny King and Sal Rinauro. He said that Nashville could have been survival of the fittest because it's an excuse to book 12 guys. You'd only need 8 to 10 main event guys and some fill-ins. And it's a cheaply produced show to do.
And we were supposed to do it in Florida, but the Florida shows got canceled.
Correct.
Remember, like we announced Survival of the Fittest 2008 for Coral Springs, and then we canceled the Coral Springs show and ended up bringing it back as the Proving Ground shows.
Yep.
2 Proving Ground shows in February 2009. Yeah.
Which was the second night I got to meet D'Lo Brown, so it was very exciting for me. One of my all-time favorites. He would also do a Jigsaw versus Kenny King or Sal Rinauro singles match on one of these nights.
This is where he puts over Sal as being very underrated.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a reason why he's the mayor of an honorable mention.
That's right.
And
his term is for life, yo.
For life. For life.
So Davey Richards, of course, would win that survival of the fittest. In reality, Nashville, Ninja Blue. Let's go over.
I was gonna say if you want to hear about St. Louis, go listen to it in the archives.
Yeah, we're not going to give you the recap of St. Louis. You already know. You listen to the archives. If you haven't, go check it out.
Go do it.
You know you want to. So Nashville, Ninja Blue would defeat Sean Schultz, who's a guy that I saw in AIW a couple times this past year. Very good. But then he retired. Just kind of out of nowhere. Ricky Morton's student. Very talented. Gary Valiant would defeat Ernie Osiris. The opening match in the show, Kenny Omega and the Briscoes would defeat Rhett Titus and the YRR of Kenny King and Sal Rinauro.
Alright, just gave me fucking flashbacks when you brought up Jimmy Valiant Jr. or whatever we called him.
Gary Valiant. Was he really like calling himself Jimmy Valiant Jr.?
He did the whole entrance. It's like, he did Boogie Woogie Man shtick completely.
Oh my god.
It was fucking god awful.
Well, if we ever get Ernie on the show to talk about his origin story.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask about Gary Valiant. It's got to be a match that sticks out in his career. We would have Delirious defeating Alex Payne. Delirious is, of course, with Jimmy Jacobs. Sarah Del Rey defeats Ashley Lane with Nevaeh, Daisy Hayes, and Serena Deeb in a 4-corner survival match. That's right, somebody was booked on this show as a manager and not used to work a match. Talk about spending money uselessly. Brent Albright and Eric Stevens would defeat Sweet and Sour Inc. of Davey Richards and Larry Sweeney? Who missed their flight?
Nobody. I don't remember. I remember that match happening. I don't remember why they decided to have Alex wrestle that day.
So if you guys out there are questioning why we're encouraging you to go back and listen to the Wrestling at the Gateway show, this upcoming tag match, well, half of it, is exactly why. The Irish Airborne would be defeated by Bushwhacker Luke and Grizzly Redwood.
Fuck yeah.
If you want to see the debut of that amazing tag team, listen to Wrestling at the Gateway. It's available in the archives. Austin Aries and the Necro Butcher would defeat Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black. Or they would go to a double count out. I don't know why it says defeat in my notes. They would go to a double count out. No DQ match. Bryan Danielson would beat Claudio Castagnoli. And in the main event, Nigel McGuinness would defeat Jerry Lynn for the ROH World title. So that is Nashville. We head to Philadelphia. Final Battle weekend is here. Gabe discusses this premonition of a snowstorm, which he thinks may have added to the stress that he was undergoing at this time, and alleged potential burnout.
Oh, and it puts a time frame too on when this was actually filmed, because he also keeps talking about, the show's coming up. The show's coming up. I don't know what I'm going to do when Ring of Honor is running right down the street from my house. He keeps talking about it throughout the DVD.
Yeah, somebody send me some movies or something is I think the line that he says.
Yeah.
This is December 26, 2008, so the day after Christmas. So if you're traveling to this show, you had to travel out on Christmas or the day after Christmas. That was very weird to me. But Bryan Danielson over Morishima, this would be the blow-off. Nigel McGuinness over Naomichi Miyafuji. That would kind of pay back the GHC match. We'd finally get a Necro Butcher and Brody Lee match. The YRR would defeat the Vulture Squad. He had Mike Quackenbush booked for the show. He says, quote, "It was usually a treat to book Mike Quackenbush." Ooh.
I just like his proposed opponent. How that would have gone calling the match.
Oh my god, I would have laughed my ass off. He said, and that's like the funniest snarkiness on the entire DVD is, usually it was a treat to book Mike Quackenbush, and then Gabe going, ooh.
That's going to get me some heat.
That was funny. So good job, Gabe. You made me laugh. Gabe
and then he books him against Aries, which makes me even laugh even harder.
Yes, yeah. So Gabe loves his work and says he's a good guy, he's professional, but he's hard to book consistently. He would have used him full time if he could, keep him on the schedule. Aries would be his opponent, and Aries would beat him. In controversy, this would tease the heel turn, teasing the slant into insanity.
And I think this is also where he talks about how Aries is much better as a heel, because he basically describes Dan as a heel by, Aries would have been that, cocky, prick, arrogant heel. It's like, yeah. He just would have been himself.
Yeah.
It's just funny. It was you have to see it because it's the Gabe. It's like Gabe's almost wanting. You just get that vibe, like Gabe's wanting to say he can just be himself without saying he can just be himself. Like Gabe's got those facials where you can tell he's picking and choosing his words at those moments.
And it's really funny too because Gabe could have said, he could be, his new gimmick is going to be he's a schmoozer and an ass kisser, and maybe they'll put the belt on him, and then roll his eyes.
That would have been a really interesting match to me though, just because
I don't think it would have been any good because they're two completely contrasting styles.
Yeah, and Aries also would have said no rest.
Yeah. And look, hey, down here, pal, no rest.
It would have been an interesting match to see, but it would have been an interesting match to hear called, and it would have been an interesting match to see happen. because I can't picture it.
Oh, it just doesn't make any sense. Weird. Kevin Steen and El Generico would beat the Briscoes. The Briscoes would go full on heel, completely cementing their role as the baddest motherfuckers in all of ROH. They would destroy the tag team champs, leave them bloodied and beaten. The Kensuke office was booked, so that's Kensuke Sasaki and Kazuhiko Nakajima. Sasaki would beat Eric Stevens. Nakajima would go over Roderick Strong. Claudio Castagnoli would go over Grizzly Redwood. In reality, this fantasy world here, marvelous. In reality, Bobby Shields and Ernie Osiris would defeat Alex Payne and Ninja Yellow. Grizzly Redwood and Ninja Blue would... Grizzly would defeat Ninja Blue. And then we get into the main card. Kenny Omega would defeat Rhett Titus. Chris Hero would defeat Eric Stevens. The Kensuke office of Nakajima and Sasaki would defeat Albright and Strong. I remember that match being very, very good.
And wasn't this like the winner got to fight the Briscoes?
Yes.
Like, that's a prize.
Yes. And then Morishima would defeat Go Shiozaki. I remember that also being very good. The Briscoes would defeat the American Wolves and Claudio...
Debuting American.
Yes, the debuting American Wolves with that name, managed by Larry Sweeney, and Claudio Castagnoli and Nigel McGuinness in a three-way. The American Wolves eliminated Claudio and Nigel to begin the match, and then the Briscoes would beat the Wolves. Naomichi Marufuji would defeat Austin Aries. I'm sure that had to be an interesting called match. In terms of
there's if we ever cover All-Star 4, there's interesting stuff that happens during, or rather did not happen during the match.
No,
that's called a teaser.
Oh, well, maybe we'll get to that come December-ish. And then a six-man tag, Delirious, Jimmy Jacobs, and Tyler Black would defeat El Generico, Kevin Steen, and the Necro Butcher. That was also a very fun tag match, if I remember back correctly. Bryan Danielson would defeat Jerry Lynn in 27.5 minutes to end the night. I remember walking out of the building that night and thinking to myself, man, that was just a flat ending, but a really great match.
Yeah, it was. It was exactly. And then I think Bryan cut a promo after the match too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a flat ending. There was nothing about the match. They're like, if you think of it as like booking for the entire weekend, there was nothing about the way the show ended that would make you say, I need to go to New York tomorrow.
Right. Which was always the goal when you had the double shot weekends in close proximity was, okay, do something great to end this show or something on the show that makes the fans want to go see what happens the very next day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very travel convenient for people like me.
Mm-hmm.
So Final Battle 2008, we're finally here. Brent Albright, Eric Stevens, Roderick Strong, and a mystery partner would take on Chris Hero, Go Shiozaki, Larry Sweeney being forced into competition, and a mystery partner. This is Steel Cage Warfare. And there would be some sort of swerve in the first half to persuade the fans that the mystery partner would not be Bobby Dempsey. But, of course, it would end up being Bobby Dempsey. And for the heels, it would be a returning Adam Pearce. And then Gabe, of course, highlights this with, "Hi, Adam." Which, Gabe's just like, hi, Adam. And this is when the phone call that we previously mentioned happens.
The awkward phone call, yeah.
Pierce said that Gabe said Pierce called him. He said it was a weird call. And Gabe didn't see any reason it should be odd between the two. Post-match, Albright is being cut down to a part-time role.
Thank God. Instead, we get, you can be a top guy, you could be a main eventer but you got to put in the work.
I mean, he could have been a main eventer.
Yep.
based on some of the reactions.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no work there. Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong would save one another in the steel cage warfare. They would hug, eventually become a team, and they would have been called the No Remorse Corps. It was a tag team, which is a fitting name for those guys. Tyler Black would defeat Nigel McGuinness for the Ring of Honor World Title. He would. Gabe deciphers the specific finish to the match, which I thought was a brilliant attention to detail. The finish was planned to be God's Last Gift, followed by a kick-out, a Phoenix Splash. Nigel would move, hit a lariat, get a 2 count. Nigel would miss another lariat, and Tyler Black would have a backslide for the win. So it's the first time the title has not changed on a finishing move. Which, interesting. Gabe would even take note of that. Minor detail, minor plot line, but very unique.
And probably is from just kind of trying to scan through the title matches in my head, that probably was the case until Eddie won the belt.
Yep. Tyler and I would assume by then Adam probably saw this DVD and then started incorporating some of the ideas.
No, that was Hunter. Eddie winning the belt was Hunter.
Oh. Either way, I mean, DVD was out there for people to see. So you got the finish there. Tyler Black, the new world champion. Jimmy Jacobs would come out. Gabe suggests maybe he sets the belt on fire or
that would have been fucking awesome.
First of all, if he set the belt on fire, it's the hottest angle in wrestling. Literally and figuratively.
That would have been fucking awesome. When he said that, I was like, that's fucking awesome. I popped for that.
I was pissed.
I totally popped for that.
I was so pissed because I was like, that is genius. Something so off the wall, something so different, unique, adding a little bit of that sports entertainment element.
And Jimmy's got a thing for fire, you know?
Yeah. Something that's never been done before. That is an angle like that goes back to when Mr. Perfect and the Genius smashed the WWF title belt. You've never destroyed a belt before? Let's do it with fire.
Yeah.
Or he would demand the belt. Either way, both guys struggle over the title. The spike would come out, which means blood's coming. Austin Aries would hit the ring. They'd both, Jacobs and Aries would both look at each other. Aries would lay out Tyler Black, and Aries would cut a promo on Tyler Black about world titles during this period of time. So Aries was coming for the belt, and that sets up Tyler Black as a strong babyface champion in a blood feud over the belt for the very first time in company history. Which we've talked about before. That the belt never had those sort of rivalries. Nope.
I think just without the closest really, like Homicide and Joe.
Yep. And that was more of just a street fight.
Yeah, there was never, we weren't having dog collar matches over the title belt, or we had some steel cage matches, but
that's as far as it went.
But just happened to turn into a bloody fest with like Joe and Jay at our best in the archives. But it would have been, it would have been. This wrap up to Nigel's title run was much better than what we got.
And I will tell you the reaction that I had when he did lose the belt. We'll save that for the shows in Houston if we ever talk about those. And that night, who I sat with at the Hall of Fame, the conversations that I had, very interesting. So we would maybe see Lacey come back, put Jacobs and Aries together, manage them each. He doesn't know for sure. He would have Steen and Generico over Morishima and Richards. This would set up contenders, the Briscoes, Sweet and Sour Inc. of Morishima and Richards. But he says the Wolves would eventually be put together. Jimmy Jacobs over the Necro Butcher. Marufuji over Austin Aries. Aries loses as a babyface one last final time.
Ruckus and Jigsaw against Brody Lee and Delirious. The Briscoes over Kenny King and Jason Blade. Eddie Edwards would have a squash match. Bryan Danielson and Claudio would have their blow-off to their feud. And if Sasaki and Nakajima were in, they would work with Steen and Generico. In reality, so this plays into something we've talked about before, where I was not sure if I had actually seen Kenny Omega in person more than about once. Apparently I saw him on this night. No recollection. Kenny Omega would defeat Claudio Castagnoli. Jerry Lynn in a four-corner survival would defeat Chris Hero with Larry Sweeney and Sarah Del Rey, the Necro Butcher, and Rhett Titus. You're shaking your head. Why?
Just, I don't, at this point, just looking at it like, don't get putting Kenny over when Claudio's coming out of the feud with Bryan. I don't even know coming out of, like, The four-way, it's just like, I don't know what to do with these guys, so here's a four-way.
And well, here's another one that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. El Generico and Kevin Steen, managed by the Hayes. Daisy Hayes would defeat the Age of the Fall, Delirious and Jimmy Jacobs.
Well, it made sense in the trying to save Hunter's soul, sort of way, but we just did this match, like,
yes,
2 shows ago. We just, like, literally just did this match.
And it wasn't any good then. Why is it going to be any better now?
Yeah.
6-man tag street fight. Brent Albright, Eric Stevens, Roderick Strong defeat Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards, and Go Shiozaki with Larry Sweeney.
Go's last match.
Yep. And actually a really fun 6-man tag.
Yeah.
Looking back on it. The Briscoes would defeat the Kensuke Office of Nakajima and Sasaki. Also, fantastic match.
And then get fucked up.
Yes. Austin Aries over Tyler Black in 17 minutes in a number 1 contenders match. Nigel McGuinness would defeat Naomichi Marufuji for the Ring of Honor World title. Title on the line, of course. Nigel keeping the belt. Headed into 2009. Which January of 2009 was an interesting month for Nigel title defenses.
Fuck, January of 2009.
And then the main event. Bryan Danielson would defeat Takeshi Morishima in the Fight Without Honor. A match I look back on incredibly fondly.
Match is fucking awesome.
It's probably one of the 3 or 4 best Final Battle matches that I can recall being in attendance for.
Yeah, it was an awesome way to cap off the night, but it just even, without going into extreme detail, since we're not talking about the show specifically, it was knowing that this was, I talk about Gabe playing things close to the vest, but we knew that this was when Tyler was intended to be crowned. Mm-hmm. And that's not where we went because he wasn't ready, in fucking quotes. It's like, fuck. It's one of those where I think Gabe's layout was capitalizing at the exact time for Tyler, and Gabe even admits, like, half our fans would have turned on him because that's what they do.
Yeah.
As opposed to by the time Tyler actually won the belt, like 80% of the fans had fucking turned on him because it had been drawn out for so long and so many missed opportunities and so shittily booked. By the time Tyler actually won the belt, it was just kind of flat, and you missed that window of opportunity to make the most out of it.
So we have a total of 8 shows. There were
2 of them don't count in terms of because they weren't really fleshed out in detail with St. Louis and Nashville. I'd say for Gabe's end of things.
Okay, so all right, so we'll throw out Nashville and St. Louis. Do we think Gabe has a clean 6-0 sweep, or is it more like 5-0 and maybe a draw or a Final Battle?
I would draw Final Battle because the Final Battle we got was not a bad show at all. It was a solid
great show.
It was a great show. Just on paper, the matches on Gabe's side are more attractive.
And that fire angle with the belt.
And the fire angle, Gabe's side of things is more attractive, but the Final Battle that we got was a very solid show, capped off by a fucking awesome match.
Yeah.
And Nigel and Marufuji was awesome.
Yeah,
the tag match with the sweet and sour 6-man was really good, and the attack on the Briscoes that kind of cemented it made the Wolves a force in their debuting weekend. Was the solid stuff, and it's really just not that Omega and Claudio's a bad match. It was just kind of felt like a waste of Claudio for what he was doing, and the 4-way. And the 4-way was kind of a waste as far as the use of I'm glad it gave Rhett a higher profile match on the show, but it was kind of a waste as far as using Hero and Jerry, and especially considering we weren't that far removed from putting a fucking belt on Jerry.
No,
and,
3 months. 3 months away.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that ends the year 2008.
Well, all this hard work has earned something, and that something is rest. But not just any rest. Optimal performance starts with sleep. That is why you need Linebacker Mattress. Linebacker mattresses are specifically designed and built for people with active lifestyles. Just like the guys and gals you hear us talk about on an honorable mention every Tuesday. If you put greater demand on your body is going to demand a greater quality of sleep. Working with professional football players Bobby Wagner and Doug Baldwin, alongside sleep study expert Dr. Gregory Jantz, Linebacker Mattress has created a complete line of mattresses to meet the needs of those who require more from their body. The entire line offered by Linebacker Mattress is engineered to address the primary 4 points of mattress comfort. Say it with me at home, I know you hear them every week. Pressure relief, proper support, relief from excess heat, and relief from excess moisture. Linebacker Mattress is the only foam mattress that offers extra lumbar support, 2+ inches of serene foam, STA cool gel, and the highest density memory foam available. Customers can buy with the utmost in confidence, knowing that there is an 89-day rest test. If you forget how many days there are in your rest test, Google Doug Baldwin. His jersey number is your answer. If the mattress is not right for you, upon request, customers will receive a full refund, and that includes the price of shipping. So check out linebackermattress.com and shop at Linebacker Mattress today. Linebackermattress.com, linebackermattress.com.
Starting in 2009, Tyler Black is, of course, the strong babyface champion. Gabe, of course, acknowledges, as we just said, that the crowd would likely turn on him, as they do with all babyface champions, except for Samoa Joe. His challengers would include the following: Austin Aries, Jimmy Jacobs, Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson, Davey Richards, Kenta, and he wants to save Kenny Omega for Toronto, because, of course, all Canadians are from Toronto.
Yes.
Steen and Generico.
And must use a sharpshooter.
Yes. Steen and Generico, speaking of sharpshooters, and Canadians would have gimmick matches with the Briscoes. He hypothesizes maybe another ladder war. He doesn't know how they'd be able to top it, but they probably would. But Strong and Stevens, Kenta, and Taiji Ishimori, who would have been the import for the year. The Phoenix Twins, Cheech and Cloudy, and of course the American Wolves would be his theories on who Steen and Generico would work with throughout 2009. What is the fascination with the Phoenix Twins?
I don't know. Or the idea of Kenta and Ishimori as a tag team would have been fucking coolness.
Yeah. And that, of course, would mean Go would head back to Japan, which he did. He finished up a Final Battle. And Taiji Ishimori would take on the role of Go Shiozaki and be on all the U.S. shows.
Instead, we got no Ishimori.
No, we got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why do you think Pierce didn't value the Noah partnership?
We got some more Kenta in 2009 for remember the HDNet matches and stuff.
Mm-hmm, but that was it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember, just to remember if there was more reasons, financial or whatever, that it may have been why we didn't use them more once Gabe was gone. because it wasn't just a relationship with Gabe. You know, Sid had done a lot to cultivate that relationship himself with Ken, Rue, and you know, like there's that hilarious picture of Sid signing the contract or whatever it was and shaking hands with people when you went over to Japan prior to the first shows we did over there. And
we'll have to dig that one up because that's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
It's not in the Durden files.
No, it wouldn't have been. But so it wasn't a relationship that was, you know, exclusive. You know, Gabe is the crux of this relationship.
It's ROH and
it was Ring of Honor and no one, you know. So it was I don't recall if there was a specific reason. I think it just
visas are expensive, so that very well
was a visa a lot of time, like, you know, that was facilitated through Harley. Man, it just stopped. You know, really, it just stopped. Like after Kenta, after the early H&N stuff with Kenta, it just stopped. Yeah, but we got to use Magno and stuff, so you know.
Blue Demon Jr.
Blue Demon Jr. So you know that made up for it.
Briscoes would feud with Eric Stevens and Roderick Strong in the latter portion of the year. Sign me up 100%.
Fuck yeah. Those Jay and Roddy matches we did get under Pierce were fucking awesome. So put them as a tag team thing. But remember, Mark was hurt. So you know, it's the fantasy world versus the reality world. What actually happened? Mark got hurt.
Necro Butcher would feud with the Age of the Fall. Gabe mentions the possible title run if the movie got a ton of cred, and it did. So,
but CZW did that with Necro, not us.
Yes, Necro was not in the ROH ring during that movie.
Sure was a show. What did he call it? Yes, yeah, it was because they didn't do the blow off until Phoenix with him and Jimmy. But what was he? Hollywood Dylan Summers.
Yeah, that would have been great. Hollywood Dylan Summers. Genius. Ruckus and Jigsaw versus the YRR. This would build up Kenny King. Delirious would have his soul saved from the Age of the Fall by Daisy Hayes. Bryan Danielson would wrestle Davey Richards, Kenny Omega, Eddie Edwards, Kenta, Taiji Ishimori. A feud with Sweet and Sour Inc. And a possible angle with a former WWE guy who had just been released.
I don't have no fucking clue who that would have been in 2009. Nine.
Yeah.
God, fuck.
Paul London?
Maybe. I had no idea who it was in 2009 that just got released. That would have been
Cabana. Cabana came back at the anniversary show.
Yeah, but he hadn't been released at the point when Gabe was
still there.
When Gabe was writing this shit. So at that point, even when this was filmed, Cabana hadn't been released. Cabana was literally like released and showed up in the same week.
Yeah, well, it was at PWG the next day.
Yeah, it was basically him and Jimmy Rave, like that anniversary show. It was like, here's Jimmy Rave, surprise, because you just got released from TNA, and then here's a bigger surprise of Cabana, who got released.
Man.
Like,
well, I can't wait till we cover that show in the archives. That show was one of Pierce's best shows.
Like, fuck, I wonder who that was then.
Stevie Richards, maybe. I know Gabe had an affinity for Stevie Richards.
Like I said, Stevie came and worked out with us, and probably would have got more out of Stevie if that wouldn't have been fucked up in 2005.
Yep. Nigel McGuinness and Tyler Black would both turn down Sweet and Sour Inc. Nigel would feud with Sweet and Sour Inc. After turning them down, possibly doing a depression storyline, which is way too close to the vest. And
that, my friends, is not a spoiler. It is a shoot.
That's right.
I don't do a good Paul Heyman either.
That's not a bad Paul Heyman.
Okay.
I'll put that one over. But of course, Gabe says he thinks Nigel would finish up and head off to WWE and TNA.
Because he deserves it.
Yeah, because he deserves it. He's the most ready. He says, even over Bryan, most ready.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Aries would be the top heel. This would bring out the dickhead, smartass side. And I put in parentheses, bring out, question mark. And he would wear scarves instead of boas. So,
yeah.
Ahead of the Chris Jericho thing, ahead of MJF. Gabe ahead of the curve again, man. Fashion is passion for Gabe Sapolsky.
Totally. T-shirts under sport coats.
Yep. He invented that, man.
But Aries ended up wearing boas. He didn't wear fucking scarves.
No. He went boas.
Yeah, he went boas.
Jimmy Jacobs, Delirious, Brody Lee, Mischief would be fucking up stuff. Maybe there'd be a tag title run with Jacobs and Aries. Sweet and Sour Inc. This is the one I'm really was waiting to get to. Sweet and Sour Inc. Larry Sweeney, Chris Hero, Davey Richards, Eddie Edwards, Shane Hagedorn, Sarah Del Rey. On Hagedorn, quote, I could have done more with him. He has a chance to get over as a heel. Well, no shit. He's the biggest heel on this show.
Yeah, it was one of those curiosity moments of, am I going to get referenced in either fashion, whether as character or as coworker, if I was going to be mentioned at all. Yeah. I mean, I was very hateable. Still am.
Yeah.
Still am. And
at PWE in September.
Yep. And again, when you go into things that you have no control over and you can fantasy book all you want, who could have predicted what happened with Alex? Yeah. There is it.
I would have been.
But it would have been a could have had a lot of fun. I don't know. But I mean, honestly, it's just in terms of sizes of personality. Just take Larry Sweeney's personality versus Shane Hagedorn's personality. Like, we're on the same side. Larry's personality is much fucking bigger than mine.
And you're two different types of heel.
Yeah, completely. So it was that. And I always felt like I was filling big shoes once Alex was no longer in the picture. And once the character of Larry Sweeney was no longer in the picture for Ring of Honor, I felt like I had very big shoes to fill that I was never going to fill because I wasn't remotely the same.
No, and that's not a fair thing for you to have to feel.
No, and people just kept trying to slap gimmicks on me. Like, you should do this gimmick, you should do this gimmick. I was like, I was just going to be like, Bobby Heenan didn't have a fucking gimmick. Bobby Heenan's gimmick was he was fucking Bobby Heenan.
And he was a cheater. That was his gimmick.
Yeah.
He's a cheating heel.
Yep. And there were just different things that were always thrown at me that would have, to kind of get that over. But, I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like, yes, I think...
you should have carried a tennis racket. I hear that works.
I hear Gabe say that, and I was like, yeah, if I would have just gotten a chance to talk more.
Yeah.
Because I can talk.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Sweet and Sour Inc. would challenge for the tag belts with, I would assume, the team of Davey and Eddie, and work against Nigel McGuinness. The YRR, push Kenny King and turn him babyface. Kenny King would be big in the second half of 2009. He also mentions that he likes that pedophile Chase and Rants too, which was very weird. And he puts over SoCal Val. Thought she was a great fit for the group. If she was available to come in, she definitely would have.
Yeah, I don't remember when that shit happened in Chase and Rants. But it was an odd thing.
It was around this time, I'm pretty sure.
Was it?
Yeah. And then here's the big thing. So, this is something I have sat on for a long time. I will be posting this when we post this show. But back around this time, probably a few months earlier, I think April or May, I sent a pitch to Gabe regarding Prince Nana. And Prince Nana being an embezzler of funds. And Gabe here suggests that Prince Nana is going to get hired into the Sweet and Sour Inc. group in the Bobby Dempsey role. And all the time the Prince is scheming, because that's what he does. He's stealing his money. He's putting guys on sides. And it's going to be Prince Nana's group against Larry Sweeney's group. Sounds very familiar. The document that I had was so old that it was done on WordPerfect. And if you know what that is, you're old. So I sent that to Gabe. Never heard anything back. Curious that he mixes that one in on this shoot interview. Kenta and Ishimori would bring about fresh matches and fresh tag matches. Kenny Omega would be in full time. Jerry Lynn, Adam Pearce, Stevie Richards, Brent Albright as a rotation. Depending on what was needed for a show, Paul London would be back full time as well.
That makes me believe that his released WWE guy, was Paul London.
Which around this timeline, it was either Paul or Spanky were both snipped.
Yeah.
I don't know what number that was for Spanky, but guest appearances this year would be from Kota Ibushi, Katsuhiko Nakajima, and Pac. Gabe, I guess, not wanting to bring back Kensuke Sasaki. We would see the returns of Rocky Romero and Jack Evans. Rhett Titus would get a push if he can get to that next level. And then, of course, we talk about the home of Judge Jeff Jones, ECW, as RVD and Sabu would possibly be coming in. Gabe always wants to book Sabu. That would be his dream. If you weren't there in 1994, you wouldn't understand. Quote, unquote. Lacey could come back also.
Almost happened in Detroit a couple times.
I could imagine.
And we got
he was going to do just a random run in it at our best.
Mm-hmm.
In the
and we ended up and now I just drew a blank on the kid's name that we ended up using that came with Sabu that day. Oh, fuck.
For a dark?
Yeah. But yeah, Sabu almost happened, and because he would come to Detroit shows every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know?
It's got to see the head of the Sabu fan club, Gabe Sapolsky.
Yeah. Yep. And that's not busting balls. That was a legit thing.
Yeah. 100% fact. Gabe ran the Sabu fan club and would sell best of tapes and write stories and stuff. 100%. I have a bunch of best of Sabu comps that I got directly from Gabe. Long before Ring of Honor existed. So, Alice in Wonderland, Silas Young, Daniel Puder, Dave Taylor, Chris Jones, Trick Davis. Ugh. Bobby Fish, Rex Sterling, Damian Wayne, all possibly coming in for various storylines and angles.
Some interesting names just littered throughout this entire thing. Like, you know, the Pac one kind of surprised me, but I think Gabe said it was because of, you know, what he saw from him in Dragon Gate.
Right.
Because at this point, too, I was, you know, I mentioned it before, like, this is, you know, this 2008, 2007, 2008 time frame is when I was getting all of those DVDs from Pure DVD Source and Pure Wrestler DVD, and, you know, Gabe wanted to crack at them, too, so he was seeing a lot of, like, the Dragon Gate stuff and the Noah stuff and just 01 or whatever other fucking random Japanese shit I would get, so he was seeing what the guys were doing in other countries.
So there was a depth chart of columns at the end of the DVD. It was separated with heels and baby faces and tweeners. Obviously, we all know who the great heels were and who the great baby faces were and who the tweeners were, the guys that could do both roles. But there was a column on the next page that Shane and I have talked about, and we're going to talk about it right now. And it's a list of guys that could come in, do some stuff, and it's kind of a depth chart. Column 1 was the guys that would be in a rotation during the course of the year. And that was Kenta, Kenny Omega, Jerry Lynn, Brent Albright, Rocky Romero, Adam Pearce, Kota Ibushi, Jack Evans, Stevie Richards, Pac, and Lacey. Column 2, and this is how Gabe kind of ranks some of the guys in terms of, you know, who he's going to start up in case he loses some talent. Sal Renaro, Jason Blade, Chasen Rance, Mike Quackenbush, Matt Cross, Rhett Titus, the Phoenix Twins, Silas Young, Rain, Alice in Wonderland, Tank, Ashley Lane, TJP, Daniel Puter, Chris Jones, Robert Anthony, the Osirian Portal, Dave Taylor, Trick Davis, and Grizzly Redwood would occupy column number 2. And just, I guess through 2 columns, any thoughts? Any names kind of stick out?
The first column was pretty much, the Pac one was the only one that surprised me just because. And there was that one name that we couldn't read.
I deciphered that was Jack Evans.
That was Jack Evans for sure? Okay. And everything else in that name and that list was pretty much, people I would have expected except for, Pac. The second column, it's again, the Phoenix Twins thing that he keeps talking about through this surprised me. Dave Taylor, that was one that was like, whoa, really? That's cool. And even that we ended up using him a couple years later, but it was, cool. Dave Taylor was on the Gabe radar as a possibility before this. It was more like the third column is the one that's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So let's go through that third column here. We've got Joey Matthews, who had yet
always money.
Yeah, one of the best workers, great brain for wrestling. Probably could have helped out in some sort of fashion in running the shows, shortening them.
The fucking match he had with Jig, that always was one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's great, and now he's a producer for ROH, or an agent.
Running their school now too, isn't he? Joey from wrestling.
Yeah. Yep. Also on the list, Bobby Fish, way in the Wayback Machine. Hallowicked, Rex Sterling, and Damian Wayne, who of course were Virginia area guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say we were picking them up every once in a while. They'd work at Dark or something like that, and some of the the Southern Virginia shows, things like that.
Yeah, a couple talented guys right there. Especially Damian Wayne. I was a big fan of his. Gran Akuma.
So was Baby Doll.
Really?
Wasn't it Baby Doll? I'm trying to remember who he's coming to shows with him. I feel like it was Baby Doll.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow. So Gran Akuma, Jenny Blake, who of course we've talked about on the Toronto Northern Navigation Show. Doug Basham, that's an interesting name.
Yeah, very.
He was a great worker once upon a time. Him and the Damager at OVW, man, those two guys could tear it up. That's not trying to blow smoke up Cornette's ass, but that's fact. The curious one to me was J.J. Dillon. What are you going to do with this guy again?
Yeah.
Martin Stone.
That one surprised the shit out of me.
Yeah, especially back then. Of course, he's Danny Burch at WWE now. Or NXT, I guess.
The next one, especially considering what wrestling in 2018 was the biggest, what the fuck? In 2008, this was on your ideas?
Yep. PCO, Pierre Carl Ouellette. Of course, he had a short run in TNA in 2004 as X before he was caught at the border trying to cross over to drive to Nashville or take a bus, who knows. Maybe they made him walk, I don't know. But, yeah, PCO on the list. How crazy is that?
But, I mean, he had the whole list. Like I said, this third list was just fucking weird.
Mike Bennett made the third list.
When Mike was doing dark matches, when we go up to the Boston area, Bob Evans, Tommaso Ciampa, Thomas Penmanship at the time, they were all doing dark matches.
Ciampa may have been one of these last two question marks.
The ones that we couldn't read?
Yeah. Now that I think about it. But of course, Chad Collier, Xavier, Seth DeLay would finish out the list, and then two question marks, followed by last, and I guess not least, but according to Gabe, the least, Bobby Dempsey.
Yeah, wow. I mean, there's names that aren't on the list at all, but they were also not. Bobby was kind of in a featured role, so him being the last name on the last column of the list was kind of surprising to me. I mean, Alex isn't on this list. Ernie's not on this list yet, because they were, still fairly new.
Right.
So I can see them not being on the list, and I'd have to kind of look at the rest of our roster at that time to see if there's anybody else who didn't make the list. But Bobby being in a featured role on the shows, but being relegated to this kind of surprised me a little.
Yeah, it makes me question a lot of things.
Well, it just, I think Bobby himself would admit that at this point he may have been taking his position for granted a little and not putting in the effort that he probably should have to continue to stay in that role once the Sweet and Sour angle ran its course.
Right.
So maybe that's, was a reflection of Gabe seeing that.
So we bounce off this screen and we go to a final screen. This is the end. And
this is the end.
Yes.
My only friend.
So
the end.
Sean Oliver asks,
of everything that stands, the end.
You done?
No. Yes.
Okay. I was like, I don't know any more lyrics to that song, so I can't pick up where you left off. But Sean asks Gabe, who is Gabe booking for and what is his inspiration? And he says he's kind of booking for himself. He's booking for the DVDs. He's booking for his market. And, he always appreciated the job and lived for the moment. Just a very honest, this is as honest as Gabe is, I think, throughout the whole thing. He's got to kind of think back on things here. Kind of puts things into perspective for him. He loved working. He says he loved working for Kerry and thankful that Kerry put his money on the line for Gabe and felt his. And these are, by the way, who Gabe books for. He loved working for Kerry. He can't be bitter. He gets very emotional here, and this is a very genuine portion of the DVD. Gabe thanks the fans. He felt the need to never waste their money or their time when they came to the shows. He puts over the fans who travel distances and felt that was the ultimate compliment. He felt it was his goal to have fans be able to look back on the shows and felt as if they got their money's worth. He books for the wrestlers. He says they committed to him and to ROH not to get rich, but in hopes of being given a spot to succeed. And it was a big responsibility on his shoulders to have their careers in his hands.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned earlier that Gabe certainly, as he espouses in this, that he was saw it as a commitment to him and to Ring of Honor, and because none of us were making fucking livings off just Ring of Honor. Well, I was, but I was an exception. I was a different case. Even the top guys aren't making a living off just Ring of Honor. Bryan was still going to go work other places, as was Claudio and Hero and Joe, and everyone had to work beyond Ring of Honor to make a living.
Yep. He mentioned something here that I thought was particularly interesting, given where we are in 2018, almost 10 years later. He says Vince can tell everyone to fuck off after a few years because they should have six figures in the bank. And in parentheses I wrote, he now works for Vince, Triple H, and Stephanie.
Hey. Deal's a deal, but I mean, it wasn't like they just came and said, hey, you want a job? You put in the time and everything through the WWN and Evolve and Dragon Gate USA and all these other fucking promotions and titles that are part of that family. So there's certainly work put in to get to that point.
He liked the artists in wrestling, which I thought was an interesting way to phrase it. That's who he wanted to emulate. And he booked for himself. He says he has no desire to work for WWE and said he'd go if they offered a lot of money, but wanted to fulfill himself creatively. So maybe they offered him a lot of money and he went, because he had fulfilled himself creatively. Of course, Gabe is still booking Evolve, so go out there and support Evolve. The show was filmed 5 weeks after he was fired, so roughly in the first week of December. Sean asked him if Kerry called today and invited him back, would he go?
And he doesn't answer this very honestly, but he kind of jokes. He said, quote, "I'd only go back if I could cut a bunch of guys, but I would keep Tyler, Omega, Richards, the Briscoes, Aries, Danielson, Strong. He wouldn't name who he would cut. And then says he would bring in Paul London, Low Key, Teddy Hart, and Super Crazy just to shake things up." And there's a little bumper that comes up that says Gabe is joking on the last 4.
Hey, if money's right, he did bring in Low Key on an Evolve show, didn't he?
He was there for a while until he got himself fired.
What a shock.
No rest. What does he want to do now? Well, he says he's gotten healthier. He wants to build relationships. Of course, Gabe had a wife and a son at this point. A very young son. I think his son would have been born maybe not yet.
I don't think I'm trying to think. Well, I'm trying to think he was born yet when me and Pele helped Gabe move. I don't think he was born yet, but maybe Rebecca was pregnant.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember when his kid was born.
So, he's got some perspective on real life. He wants to treat each day one by one, and just like baseball, pitch by pitch. Gabe's a big baseball fan, in case you guys didn't figure that out by the Phillies jersey he's wearing.
Or the Honor Nation name to the Boston shows, or the rally flags that we used, the rally towels.
Oh God, I forgot about those towels.
I might still have mine.
Mine is in the garage in the shirt box. I know that.
I did find some other cool stuff when I was trying to track down my see if I still had the flyer for the wrestling school, the original one. Oh. So I did find some other fun stuff that I put pictures up when appropriate.
Yes. Which only would be found on An Honorable Pod's Instagram and Facebook. So
correct.
Facebook.com/An Honorable Pod, at An Honorable Pod on Instagram, and a link on An Honorable Pod on Twitter. Gabe says he's not a millionaire, did not get a call from Jeff Jarrett or Vince McMahon. Sean says that from a fan's perspective, he thanks Gabe for doing this for his passion, and Gabe thanks everyone who helped make it possible. And that wraps us up for Gabe's Book of ROH Secrets, brought to you by Kayfabe Commentaries. Final thoughts?
Well, I think the whole reason that I even put this out there to you as something to watch and kind of do a little bonus with is because I never watched it when we had it in the office, and I was just very curious. I didn't know when it was. I didn't remember when it was filmed or when it was released, and if I would look at it and say, this he booked all this shit after what already happened, and just to be contrary, and I didn't know what to expect out of it. I knew some of what to expect out of it. Like I said, I knew that the plan was to crown Tyler at Final Battle, and for him to be the one to dethrone Nigel. I think anyone with eyes who paid any remote attention to the product saw that that's where kind of what the big picture was going to in the latter portion of 2008. And but I guess I just kind of wanted to see and hear how it was being fleshed out as we go back through this journey, and just so so I had that mental notes of where the roads diverged from the original plan to where we went, and I almost wish that I wouldn't expect it to. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, it would have been kind of cool if Adam had done a similar thing, just to see where Adam versus where we went with Hunter. But I suppose in some ways too that would have been like Adam and Cornette sitting down together, just to kind of see where. Now, what did these guys have in their minds before they were fired? Before Adam was fired, as to where they were going, and how much of that did we continue to follow through with under Hunter and Jim, as opposed to Adam and Jim? Because at least with that you had Jim as the connective tissue,
right?
With Gabe and Pierce, the connective tissue was the office and what we knew to be able to convey of this is what we were doing. And I don't. I mean, I know Adam asked me those questions. I don't know if he ever asked those questions of like a Sid or a Ross or a Carey. I think we got a more. There was a little bit more of a seamless transition from Pierce to Hunter as far as where things seem to be going, as opposed to Gabe to Pierce, where the beginning of it is kind of similar, and then it just fucking goes off the rails in some ways from where it was intended to go by those who came before.
Well, that wraps up our final take on Gabe's Book of ROH Secrets. We want to encourage everyone to follow our Twitter page, get us to 300 followers. We're not far away. We will do Shane's Chikara run as a bonus show, in addition to the WrestleMania weekend show with a special guest co-host.
And that one's just all about making schedules work, because our schedules are not conducive to each other. No. The guest host and my schedule are not conducive to each other. Maybe just you and the guest can do it together.
I mean, I'll sit down with him. We have fun. Boy, we could tell some stories. At an honorable pod on Twitter. That's also our Instagram. So go over there, give us a follow on each. We try and post something every day or so, and we'll interact with you on Twitter. Like if you have show suggestions or bonus show suggestions, we'll take those too. I mean, anything really. And then I guess it's appropriate because we're about 3 weeks away. As we tape this, it's August 10th. At least the back portion of this, it's August 10th. I'm going to be watching All In live, and I would love to maybe do a twitch.tv with you guys during All In. So
fancy talk.
We'll see if that's something that we put into motion here in the coming days. I'm going to look into it over the course of the weekend once my family leaves town. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Jeff Schwartz partner.
At Hagedorn Shane on Twitter and Instagram as well. Shane Hagedorn on Facebook, Shane Hagedorn YouTube, honorable mention YouTube. Now apparently an honorable mention on Twitch.
Maybe.
Hey, you got to do it now. There's no maybes. Put it out there.
I'm going to look into it and see what the technology is, and
do it.
We'll see.
You and Pelly can Twitch together.
Oh, but maybe Pelly will join me during All In. Who wouldn't want to hear from Pelly Primo? We will not talk video games, Pelly.
I might watch. I may be watching All In with Alex. I'm not sure yet. I got to see what my schedule does.
Well, maybe everybody will join in as we watch the first independent wrestling show to draw 10,000 people.
We will gang bang at All In.
No TV. Of course, Facebook.com/an honorable pod. We're brought to you by the Creative Control Network, so be sure to follow Joe Feeney, the head of the Creative Control Network, at JFF, NEY 3RD, and at the CC Network 1 for all the latest and greatest on the Creative Control Network. Be sure to follow our scientist of sound, the great Zach Johnson, who brought to you that awesome CM Punk, the final chapter recollection story, available on our YouTube page. His Twitter is at RadioZT. This show you're listening to now is on iTunes, SoundCloud, the Google Music Play Store, Amazon Echo, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Hipcast. There's only one thing left to do, and you know what that is. To quote the great Sal Rinauro, no need to trip out, it's time to dip out. Slap the porpoise. This one is over. We are out. We'll see ya when we see ya. See you later.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the the dogs say goodnight, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Are you a friend or family member struggling with drug or alcohol addiction? Your private insurance provider may be able to help. Banyan Treatment Center offers top-notch facilities and care at locations across the country. Give them a call to learn more. 1-800-508-0119. That's 1-800-508-0119.
Why buy used when you can buy certified? Why be unsure when you can have a 182-point inspection? Why settle for less when you can have a 7-year, 100,000-mile warranty? Why go anywhere else when you can visit Montgomeryville Acura? We have a great selection of certified vehicles, all marked with our one price promise. The price you see is the price you pay, guaranteed. Montgomeryville Acura, where Steve says, sell them, on Route 309. Online at MontgomeryvilleAcura.com.
Right now, you can get both Sprint's unlimited plan and the all-new Samsung Galaxy S10 included for just $35 per month per line for 5 lines. All you need is approved credit and an 18-month lease. No trade-in required. Visit a Sprint store, sprint.com, or call 800-SPRINT-1.
Phone $15 a month after $22.50 a month. Credit apply within 2 bills. If canceled earlier, remain balance due. Unlimited basic after $630.20. Pay $32 per month per line for 5 lines with auto pay. Data deprioritization during congestion. Speed maximums. Use rules and restrictions apply.